said somebody, they weren't.
Is someone not, does he?
Okay, we're on.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Karen.
We start without it?
Yeah, she'll get it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen regular meeting. It's Wednesday, April 11th, 2018. This meeting is being recorded, and it will be shown throughout the week on Channel 9. It also will be on the Dayton website. And if anybody's going to record anything, you just need to let me know. Okay? Okay, let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chairman, while we're standing, I would like to mention the passing of Josephine Rigo. I didn't know Josephine, but I knew her father. I think many, many people in Dayton remember Joe Rigo Sylvia. He was one of the largest farmers in town. And what I remember most about her father was the farm I worked on in Berkeley. Joe was very friendly with Joe Rigo, and every time Joe Rigo innovated something in Dayton, it ended up on the farm I worked on. So I would ask for a moment of silence in memory of Josephine Rigo, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, we had an election last Saturday, and Selectman Goulart was reelected.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So the first order of business is always the reorganization of the Board of Selectmen. So the process is as follows. I will act as the chairman of the board until we get the first vote taken. I'll accept nominations. There's no need for a second, and if we only have one nomination, there's really no need for a vote. That being said, I would like to say that I would like to be the chair another year. I would also like to be the personnel officer for another year, but that's up to you guys. So I'll accept nominations for the chair.
I make a motion to nominate Nancy Goulart, chairperson.
Okay, I'll make a motion to nominate Brett Zagrafos as the chair. Okay. We'll vote on, first name is Nancy Goulart. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay.
Nay.
Second name would be Brett Zagrafos. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Okay, that motion carries, so Selectman Zagrafos is now the chair of our board. Switch places. Want to switch places?
Absolutely. I kept it nice and warm for you.
Gee, thanks.
Thank you, colleagues. I appreciate that. And now it's time to elect a clerk. So at this time, I will accept nominations for a clerk.
I nominate Selectman Goulart to be the clerk.
Any other nominations? Okay, hearing none. Selectman Goulart, congratulations. You are our clerk.
No, you call for a vote.
But we don't need a vote.
My answer is no.
Okay, all those
You
in favor?
have to call for a vote.
Nancy, this is the manual we're using. You don't call for a vote.
The
If there's
person
only one
who's
nomination.
nominated can refuse, and I'm saying no.
Okay, you can say no, but that's a different issue.
Okay, I nominate Jack Taylor to be clerk of the Board of Selectmen. Hearing no other nominations, do you agree to serve?
I guess I have no choice.
All right,
I do,
congratulations.
yeah.
Okay, at this time is public input.
No, personnel.
Oh, I'm sorry. At this time, so the Board of Selectmen does have a personnel officer, and it has been former Chairman Taylor. And at this time, I will accept nominations for personnel officer.
I'll recommend Nancy Goulart.
I would recommend Jack Taylor. Any reason? Well, good.
And I have to second one of these?
No, you don't have to second. You just need to take a vote now.
Okay. So the first, since it came in first, would be Selectman Goulart. All those in favor of having Selectman Goulart be the personnel officer, say aye.
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 Nay.
Okay, the ayes have it. Congratulations, Selectman Goulart.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next on the agenda is public input. We have a lot of public this evening, so I'd like to hear from you. First up, anybody have anything to say tonight? Okay. So the way
You got some-
I was just gonna say, congratulations all. I think you'll do a fine job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that, sir.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Cedrone. So since there's no public input during public input, I suspect folks might have something to say during specific agenda items. The way I'd like that to work, if it's okay with my colleagues, would be when an agenda item comes up, and you as well, Madam Administrator, when an agenda item comes up, we'll allow the board to speak first. You know, rebuttal if there is a rebuttal, and then we'll open it up to the floor. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
Okay. So with no public input, I'm going to turn the floor over to our Town Administrator, Mallory Aronstein, for her report.
Good evening. So a little bit of good news. I saw Tom Ferry. Oh, there he is. Tom Ferry and I worked very closely to apply for about $92,000, a little bit more, to DER for a culvert replacement grant. And I'm just letting you know that we're laying in wait on that, but I'm very hopeful that we get it. It's to correct some stormwater issues, some massive washout and flooding, and to replace the culvert and also provide good crossings for wildlife in the area and prevent riverbank and erosion and all of that. So that's all my report is, just an FYI.
All right. Well, thank you, and thank Mr. Ferry. I know you guys are working closely, and it's very much appreciated, so thank you very much.
What's the location?
Briggs Street.
Oh,
And
okay.
there's two over there, but I know that you're familiar
Okay,
with the
okay.
flooding in that area.
I didn't know if we had other critter crossings that we were.
We do have other critter crossings, but we made the decision to choose that one because it best fit the grant and had a lot of benefits for the ecological benefits, that would be received by replacement. So, and thank you, Mr. Ferry, for all of your assistance.
I didn't even see you back there. Thank you, Superintendent Ferry. Blending in. Okay, I know that we are supposed to discuss a proposed bocce court on town property. We have arrived a little bit before 7:45 to this agenda item. Does anyone see a problem with discussing this a little early? Dayton Lions? I believe Mr. Rhines has something to say. Sure, Mr. Rhines.
Ask them if they're expecting anybody else to come.
Oh, okay. And to the Dayton Lions, are you expecting anybody else to show up this evening for the discussion? Okay. We'll hear from Mr. Rhines first.
Tim Rhines, 316 Main Street, town of Dayton. I was just, had the honor of being given the chairmanship again for the Parks and Rec Committee for the following year coming up. And we just voted downstairs that we are in favor of a bocce court. If a letter needs to be sent to any personnel, just let us know who that person would be. We'll forward that along.
I'll take that. That would be great if you could do that.
Okay. We can have that done. We'll get a letter out to the town administrator.
Mhm.
If you don't have her email address, I will forward that to you. And we're in favor of it. We like the location. It's a great spot. We understand that the Lions Club is going to donate their time and resources to install this. I think it would be a win-win for the community all the way along, because it would coincide with the pavilion itself and the events that go on at the pavilion to give the opportunity for people, the residents or whoever's coming in to, you know, do something instead of just, you know, chit-chatting or whatever after a meal, so they can just, you know, work off their barbecue chicken that Tony cooks. So, thanks, Mr. Rosario. Thank you, members of the Board of Selectmen,
you.
and congratulations on the
Thank you.
chairmanship. And I look
Congratulations
forward
to
to
you.
working with the three of you again for the following year.
Thank
And
you.
the committee also does. Thank you very much.
Thank you for all that you do, Mr. Rhines. That being said, if my colleagues are okay, we're still 5 minutes early, but I'm happy to begin discussing the proposed bocce court on town property with the Lions Club. Would anybody care to open up the floor? Mr. Ferry.
They brought in the big gun.
Heavy hitters. Thank you, Mr. Ferry.
Good evening, my name's Tom Ferry, I'm also with the Dayton Lions. Congratulations to the three of you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
The bocce court's not a brand-new idea. It started off being a lot smaller, with some, a lot smaller concepts, but we have some good insight and good members in our Lions Club, and saw this could be a much better potential for our community. Not alone just for the facility itself, but an opportunity that the community can come together and make this work to build the project itself as we've done in the past. And it's been quite a while, like when we had the pavilion built, there was a lot of people involved, volunteering, materials, time, expertise, stuff like that. And this fits that bill, and it also builds your community doing that also. My concept was just basically a rectangle with some sand, and it wasn't gonna work. I haven't played bocce yet myself, but I'm told it's coming. It's actually a very involved sport around our own community and in our own community, in backyards, but there's quite a bit of competition in around our community, and our club also has been invited to compete this year also. We don't have a team yet, do we? That's coming too.
That's coming.
Yes. So the concept design, we're proposing that it be in line, similar to the pavilion, directly behind it. The roof slightly smaller, same color roof, same type of roof, metal, and it'll be all open space with a concrete pad around it, so it's like a sunken pit. And it will not be just a bocce court, it'll be there for the overflow for the larger events, or inclement weather when you have one small event. For example, like the Taste of Dayton type scenario, it'll work very well with that, even though you have the pit there, but you still can use it, and it's a great asset. It's not gonna be the Lions, it's just the project, the Lions, it just ties in with the pavilion that we provided for the town, and that will be the town of Dayton's when it's done. So, before, actually, Tony's the point person inside our club, and before we go further in our club with that project, obviously, one of the questions is the selectmen gonna be okay with that location for that, and also Park and Rec? And we heard already Park and Rec's favor of it. It's gonna be tucked there behind prime time, or at prime time too. They can use that during the day also, just for a place to sit, never mind the game itself. But it'll be tucked away, so it shouldn't be utilizing any future unforeseen needs for this property, because it's tucked there against the back corner there. But yet, it's accessible for the police for drive-bys and stuff like that. They keep a vigilant on it. Any questions?
Does anyone have a drawing yet, what it's gonna look like?
No, not
What's the floor? What's the floor made out of?
The material, the actual media that the balls roll on, there's so many different ones out there in the market.
Well, that's why I was wondering.
It's very similar, it's gonna be mostly stone dust with, probably stone dust with clay and sand mix.
Right.
So it's something that will pack?
Yes. I mean, out in California, they use oyster shells, but that's,
I've seen it on grass,
yeah, and.
like turf grass.
Then there's maintenance. This with stone dust, just, pack it and rake it now and then, and that's it. There is no maintenance to it.
Are we gonna have any additional parking out there behind the new old town hall? Or in that area?
No, actually, we secured that better with granite blocks.
Yeah, I saw that.
At this time, just, so we can train people during the regular business hours, and also when there's a lot of pedestrians on the property, we don't have vehicles
Traffic.
where they don't belong
Right.
on top of people. So, to address your question, not at this time. For an event in the pavilion now, you have that parking behind the Grange, plus the playground and the upper parking lot of the Grange.
Right. Is that gonna be paved behind town hall, the old town hall?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, all right.
Selectman Taylor?
No questions.
I have one kind of logistical question, more for Mr. Rhines and perhaps the Lions Club as well. Regarding a schedule, is Parks and Rec gonna do a schedule to reserve the court, or is this gonna be first come, first serve?
Selectman Grafis, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because the pavilion itself is under control of the Lions Club, as everyone knows, so they put their own events there. And we put most of the events that do happen on any of the town fields and properties in town. And it may be in our best interest to just leave that up to the Lions Club, because they've run the pavilion so long, for such a great, you know, doing it well for so long, that it may be best left in their hands, because then, of course, it's, you know, scheduling is more, you know, I've discussed this before at the department head meeting, that we need office space. I think we're the only recreation department in the state of Massachusetts that does have an office, a telephone, a printer and such, but that's another subject for another day. But
And that will be
the
discussed.
logistics, I think that, it's up to the Lions. I don't know if the Lions Club would want to, you know, release control of that. I don't know.
Of course.
But that'd be a Lions Club vote, so.
Any thoughts, Mr. Ferry?
We can explore that, it's a very good question. Obviously, if someone's having an event with a pavilion, assuming they have the bocce court, that shouldn't be assumed, so there's no conflict. It does make sense. Carl Stromstrom's been doing their reservations year-round, even when he's in Florida. He does it all by email and trying to foretell any conflicts and what that. But that's a very good question. We can resolve that.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And I just wanted to say to Mr. Rhines's point, at some point, we will, as a board, have to have a discussion about what to do in terms of office space here, relocation, or just maximizing the office space. So if you'd like at that time, I'll be happy to send you an email to let you know when that discussion will happen. Okay? Absolutely.
So when do you expect to have a drawing? If we give you tentative approval to take the next step, do you have somebody to do the drawing, or?
We can provide that if needed. It's just slightly, it's the same rectangular shape as the pavilion, just slightly smaller, because it's going to be almost 80 feet long,
Yeah.
about roughly 30 feet wide. And it makes sense to be inline, so when you're driving by, it doesn't look like a cluttered building. So we want it inline.
Mhm.
So a drawing would just depict that.
Is the site going to have, I don't play bocce, so I don't know. So, is that building going to have more than one court?
No.
As of right now, we'd like just to get one going,
Okay,
you know, to see, you know, how it goes, but, from some of the homework I've been doing, it's a very popular game, all these towns are doing it.
yeah.
And then if we see that, you know, there's need for another one, I think we probably can address it down the road, but.
I have a question. Is there room on the property for further expansion?
There is, however, a second or third court might be wise elsewhere also. I mean, our whole town's not right here.
Very true.
Yeah. I think we should hear from our town administrator on any issues she would have with it.
So I think it's a great idea. I just have some technical questions. It's going to be located on town property, yes?
Yes.
It's going to be built by whom?
Volunteers.
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 Are the volunteers, do they happen to be a construction company?
There's more than one construction company may be entertained, but we're not paying them.
So I believe that this is preliminary right now because, as Selectman Goulart's saying, we need drawings. I need you to be in touch with me because whoever's doing the work will have to pay prevailing wage for the employees of the company to build. So that's why I need you just to tell me everything you know about the project, and I understand it's preliminary right now, but just keep me posted so that we can better identify if that's the case. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I mean.
Why?
it's
You're
all-
asking why?
No,
Yeah.
it's all volunteers, all volunteers.
So it's not so
We're not paying them, no.
nobody is
It's-
paying for anything?
It's gonna be a community thing, anybody who wants to come down and help, you know, raking or,
right.
moving, dirt around or just feeding, the lumber, it's all volunteers, so my definition of volunteer is no pay.
Selectman Goulart?
I think, I didn't know about this till I saw the agenda tonight, so I'm going to dredge up some history. The building we're sitting in right now, most of you remember, is where the Lions Club built tennis courts years ago. And when the decision was made to turn this tennis courts into town hall, they got moved down to where they are now. We had the pavilion, and the Lions built that under the direction of Carl Stornstrom, I believe. Again, no cost to the town, no labor, no whatever. Everything was provided. Since that time, we have put in a sewer line to Prime Time. Again, some of that was town employees, and we had a contractor step up so we could use the license. So this is not the first rodeo for the town of Dayton when it comes to Lions construction projects, or even, I'll even mention the library parking lot, because the land was donated, and the same contractor who covered our sewer line to prime time not only allowed use of the license, but he donated heavy equipment and operators, and our highway department brought in the materials, as I remember. So this is not something brand new. For, I'm gonna say, 40 years or more, the Lions Club has been involved with this kind of thing. So this is just the latest project, I'd describe it as. That's why when I said, if we tentatively approve this, then the next step is, obviously, we need to see drawings. So I think it's a great idea.
Mr. Ryan.
Quickly, I think I just want to convey that I think that the town administrator's heard some numbers that have been thrown out there in regards to construction of, and the numbers that are out there are just for materials and not to pay for labor.
So usually prevailing wage is pretty straightforward because it's public entity, a public works project, and to be enjoyed by the public. So where this is intended to be donated to the town, although maybe I have that wrong because that hasn't been said here, I called the Attorney General's office to find out how that works. And she said, based on the information I gave, so that I know that this is preliminary and things might change. That's why I'm asking you to keep me into the loop so we can get further clarification. She said that the town may have to pay, or not the town, whoever's building this may have to pay prevailing wage. So it's just something to be aware of, and please I ask that you just keep me posted.
Okay.
And just to finish that up, so all of those projects, with the exception of the library parking lot and the sewer line, obviously the contractor got a big thank you for doing that. But the Lions projects, the tennis courts, the pavilion, after the projects were completed, then it was donated to the town. It was accepted they were accepted as gifts, and they were handled like other kinds of gifts, that whether it's monetary or land or whatever. So, so for any new people that are listening to this, again, I think it's a great idea.
One of the members of the conservation came up here. They're waiting for me downstairs.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Ferry.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion that we tentatively approve the proposal for a bocce court to be constructed by and funded by the Dayton Lions Club on town property, and with a request that this would, if this passes, this would authorize you to come up with drawings so we can take, so I'll just add, not as part of the motion, we'll do this in steps. So the next step, if this passes tonight, would be the drawings, and then we look at it. And then eventually, if it all works out, there'll be a final one. So I'm just making the motion for the next tentative approval to take the next step.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any further discussion? I wanted to ask, I apologize, did anybody else in the public here this evening have anything else to say about the bocce ball court? Opinions, yay, nay?
Anyone want to play?
Great idea.
Okay.
Great idea.
All right.
How many
Somerset has-
teams will it be building one court?
8, teams, 2 teams.
2 teams?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, 2
That
teams.
play?
Yeah.
That's,
So
Yeah.
you're go- how
There'll be
many
4
total?
people.
You don't have to get how many people will play?
Yeah, 2 teams, 4 on each team.
Right.
So-
as far as I know, yeah.
So 8 people can play one
Right,
game.
yeah.
It's a great game,
I know, I play.
great game.
Just a point of interest, there are 2 courts in Somerset, one up on Brayton Avenue,
Mhm.
there, and behind the Pottersville School, you go by the basketball court,
Yep.
there's 2 courts there. You go by there any time of night, you have both these leagues, the practice one every night of the week, there's 20 people there.
You play how many?
Ours ain't any better though.
You play in Somerset.
So it is
Yeah.
a point, that's why when they came up with the idea to do it, it became very interesting for the town.
The bocce players will keep the track walkers company at night, because that gets used all hours too.
Are you done with me?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a motion and I have a second. Before we take a vote, I just wanted to say, when I was living in Paris, this was very common. You would see people playing on random street corners. So I think it sounds fantastic. All right. That being said, let's take a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Ferry. Thank you, Dayton Lions, for all that you do.
Guys.
Thank you.
I'll get that out to you. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to old business now. The first item up is the policy manual review, and specifically section 201. And if it's okay with you, Madam Administrator, I would like you to open this up if that's okay.
Great, sure. So I have this, you've received, I'm sorry, do you mind just taking
Something different.
that is part of this. So this is the employee policies section. And you do have from a previous submission my kind of spreadsheet. So the first one is commemoration of employee, and basically this is, dare I bring this up, is like the flag policy. And how it stands now in this policy manual, I believe to be a little extensive. And I recommend that you strike for that. The next one is the appointments.
Can I just
yeah.
comment on that? I agree, this is extended. I think we need to revisit the whole flag policy thing.
This says 30 days, just so in case anyone's wondering why I think it's extensive. It says 30 days for any employee, current or retired.
Madam Administrator, I just wanted to echo what Selectman Taylor had said about revisiting the flag policy, maybe at a future date in a more comprehensive manner. I know we have a lot to do, but
Yep.
I do think that's really important, that we get that right.
Sure.
I would like to see the town follow the US flag code.
So you'd be in favor of striking this?
Yes, I would.
Assuming. So that's that one. The next one is an appointment/hiring policy or section on this. We've discussed having a separate hiring policy and have expressed some intentions about that. And I went through this and we would have to add, it lists out all the different officers that are appointed throughout the town. We've already made changes to this. We have a cannabis policy task force because we're evolving with the time. So we'd have to make changes to that if you chose to retain this policy. But my recommendation is that we strike and revamp with an organizational chart and then have a hiring policy separate from the appointments, listing out who we appoint. So that was my recommendation there.
Selectman
Do
Goulart?
you have a question?
Yeah.
Lucy?
Are you striking just the time or the entire policy? Starting with commemoration?
Just it says 201001, to me, that's one policy. So I'm,
The whole thing is what Selectman
yeah,
Goulart's
strike
asking.
that.
Okay.
So,
The commemoration of employee?
okay,
And
all
then we'll
right.
revisit it in a more comprehensive
Okay,
manner.
because when we were talking time, I didn't know if we were only talking time we were eliminating or the policy.
No, I think the whole thing.
Okay, fine.
The
Okay,
whole
that's
thing.
fine.
The appointments, I'd like to strike the whole thing. I don't mean, completely throw it the window, but revamp and make it what it needs to be. And my recommendation for this appointment/hiring bit, 201-002, organizational chart, which I think would be helpful. Even the Finance Committee Chairman actually mentioned it last night. And then the hiring policy that we've discussed previously, which would be more comprehensive. Is this okay how I'm going, or you?
Oh, yeah,
okay.
no, this is fine.
If you
Absolutely.
go through 3 pages, unfortunately how this printed out, the drug-free workplace policy title is on the bottom. Retain that for sure. And I would actually address medical marijuana use. We have to allow that, but, we can have rules about people who need to take medical marijuana can't do it on the job and all of that.
When you say allow it, you're not meaning
You can't
someone
tell
could
somebody.
use medical marijuana at home and then come to work?
Right,
I
they
don't wanna
can't
get too
come
much into it.
in under the influence of it, but we can't tell somebody that they can't take their medicine.
Oh, of course,
So
absolutely.
this obviously isn't updated to handle that, but
Yeah,
that would
similar
just be
to
my.
any drug use.
Exactly, yeah. Um, 201-004 is a sexual harassment, I'm sorry.
One last question, I'm sorry, Madam Administrator, I should have asked it before. So we're gonna retain and maybe revise or revamp the policy, the drug-free
Yes,
workplace?
and I don't want to jump right into that. There's currently an MCAD case with a firefighter who has been prescribed medical marijuana, and I wanted to see how
We'll let
that
them
plays
take
out.
the lead on that.
Yep, exactly. Get some guidance from the state, always helps. 201-004 is the sexual harassment policy, which you voted last meeting to take on the anti-harassment policy. So this would be
Replaced, right?
replaced. And that's quite long.
Kudos on that, by the way, Madam Administrator.
201-005 is something called the Employee Recognition Program. From what I can tell, I don't believe that we're doing this, so I would move to strike it. If we want to revamp a policy in the future, I think that's welcome. I have a silly little award I give out to department heads every month.
Big cheese.
The big cheese. Tom Ferry is the big cheese right now, so if you see him, he hates it, so.
I'm a block of cheese.
201-006, use and operation of motor vehicles. At a previous meeting, a handful of months ago, I had submitted this town vehicle use policy. It was carved out by what's here and then just updated based upon some feedback I received from some town employees and department heads. And the only change I made to update it today lies on where we should park the town hall vehicles, because now the town hall vehicles are at Old Town Hall. So I just had a blanket statement that anybody using a municipal vehicle should provide premium parking spaces to the members of the public, and whenever possible. So that is a separate policy that I am recommending that we replace 201-006, use and operation of motor vehicles, to this that I have submitted to you.
One question before we move on, and I apologize. I briefly went through this, but I didn't read it with a fine-tooth comb. Is there any mention of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Parades.
Vehicle branding, like putting a
A seal or
town
anything?
seal on it, or some sort of marking?
No, but I'm not expecting you to go with this tonight,
So
so if you
something
want to
we
examine that, we
Okay.
can.
All right, thank you. And I wanted to tell my colleagues, if there's anything that you want to chime in on, please feel free as we go through.
Okay. We'll go to 201-007. This is emergency closings for town hall and town offices, and it says see clerical union contract. I don't know why we need a policy to say that, so I recommend that you strike that.
Oh, I know why. There's a clause in there that requires that the clerical union employees be notified by a certain time of the day.
In the contract,
Contract.
so
Why
we
you
would
have to
follow
restate
that
it.
regardless. Anyway.
But how
But the
would-
policy manual references it, and if somebody doesn't know it's in the CBA and goes here and there's no policy, they might think we don't have a policy. But if they go here and look at it, it's gonna say, look at the CBA, that's the clerical union. That's all I'm saying.
I think she's 100% correct, and here's why. Because if there comes a time when the three of us aren't on the board, how would they know that that's where they would find that in the CBA if it wasn't at least referenced? You know what I mean?
My concern is if you reference everything that you could reference about these policies, this thing could be just a number of articles that say reference this, and I'm not sure what the benefit of that is.
Well, it's a resource that a new board that maybe wasn't as seasoned as our board would use. I mean,
And it shows that there is a policy in place, it's just that you're not gonna put everything that's in that CBA relative to that in here.
what I also want to remind my colleagues is that this is not just for a future Board of Selectmen. The town employees are actually going to be abiding by this policy manual, so this is just as much for them as it is for us.
So
Oh,
that
yeah.
being said, I think that what we should do then is not limit it to the clerical union contract, because this would be subject to
All contracts.
everybody.
Correct.
So
So we should just say.
revisit this,
emergency.
rewrite it to say emergency closings.
Mhm.
You're right, all right.
Um,
So how about if we keep the heading and strike the 1 and 2, and you come up with appropriate wording?
Oh, sure, yeah, just for townwide.
And it could even be based on what's in the CBA, but
Exactly.
just needs to spell things out for everybody so everybody's on the same
But
page.
you're not suggesting we rewrite in here what the CBA says,
No,
just a reference
It would
to
just
it.
be how
Correct,
we
yeah,
handle
absolutely.
closings. Okay. 201-008 is, it says employee internet and email use policy, and then later on, there's another policy that talks about social media use and computer use.
Mhm.
I would like this all to be kind of put in together. Hopefully, if we have a network administrator approved at town meeting, this is something that they would be tasked with, and I would work with them on, because I do believe that it's important. I just don't think that what's written here, I think we could shorten it up. And then I did some abbreviated work with this, and then I stopped when I was feeling that we should have a network administrator, so I have some basis for this, but I don't think this is a fitting policy just because it's separated out and we could change it and modernize it.
I like a computer use policy that's a blanket that covers
Yes,
all of this
everything.
stuff.
Okay.
And I believe that was your suggestion when we originally started that conversation, was to kind of almost do them together, because they really do go hand in
They
hand.
do.
A social media policy as well as a
Right.
computer use.
Okay. And then I think we also added email to that, and I remember Selectman Goulart mentioning.
Yeah, we talked about
Yeah,
that.
that's, yep, absolutely.
Okay, so that brings us to 009. This is a customer service policy, and I know that I'm gonna sound foolish recommending to strike customer service. I love customer service, I think it's very important. What's listed here is a management thing, and on us to make sure that our employees are providing customer service. I understand that it's employee policy in here. I would make it a little bit different than what's listed here if you did want to go the way of a policy. So if you don't vote to strike it, I guess my secondary recommendation is to rewrite it in such a way of like an employee expectation. When they're hired, they'd be, counseled on, this is our standard indictment of customer service.
I would agree with that.
This definitely needs work.
This here.
I'd like to pose a question to my colleagues. Do we really think that the employees who work here, most of them have been here for quite a long time, a decade or more, do you really think they need a customer service policy? I think they know how to.
I don't think they need to,
Interact with
I
the
don't think it
public.
needs to be this detailed, but I do think we need to have a policy or a statement to say this is the expectation for employees as a public service.
And that's a management, right? I mean, we can
Right.
just reiterate this.
Right,
and appeal
yes.
it, yeah.
And I think it's important, this talks about telephone calls and all. I think it's important, whether it's a phone call or if you're walking through the foyer and somebody comes in the door, you greet them and say, may I help you?
Exactly.
Even
I
if all you're
totally
doing is sending them to an office, they can't find a particular office or whatever.
Absolutely. When I was training to work in a restaurant, they said, this is years ago, but they said, we're gonna sit here in silence for 5 minutes. It's excruciating to not be recognized for 5
Oh,
minutes. It's
absolutely.
horrible. So that really set in with me, so I hope,
Even supermarket checkers now, when you go to check out, they say hi, or how you doing, or something.
Even at the self-checkout?
No, you just want that one to work, right?
get the employee discount if you're at self-checkout. Yeah. Okay. I saw that online, I didn't make that up. So I have to give props whoever did, 'cause it's funny. Okay, policy on ethical conduct. Again, I feel silly recommending against this. I think ethical conduct is important. We are bound to follow the conflict of interest law anyway. We are bound every 2 years to take a test that we file with the town clerk. This is redundancy, and we have to follow it anyway, and there are state mandates that force us to take steps to follow it. I don't believe it needs to be in our own policy.
So are you recommend, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you can go, Madam.
I don't recommend it to be in our own policy manual, since we have to do it anyway, and anytime they would update it, then we have to make sure we update our own policy. It's double work.
So to be clear, what you're not saying is to strike it and replace it with a reference to the conflict of interest law. You're just saying, we already do it, we'll just take it out.
That is what I'm saying, yes. Is this the end? Oh, no. Smoke-free workplace policy is the next one. Retain, that's a legal requirement.
Here's that one.
I'm still flipping.
There are some
After-
references that we need to just address in these policies that I'm saying to retain. I understand this was created before a town administrator was approved, or maybe it was approved but not hashed out yet. So we just need to go in there and fix that. And my plan is, once we have all of these recommendations voted on, to put them in this format so that everything's the same, even the ones that we retain, just so you're aware. So I'll go in and fix those.
So you're gonna revamp this section kind of.
Just to take out, like, it has town administrator in brackets and italicized, so we just have to fix those kinds of things.
Sure, absolutely. One thing I will say is, Marilyn Edge, I believe her last name is Edge, she is like the town's tobacco guru, and she knows everything about tobacco and tobacco law, smoking law. So I would suggest if you ever, need advice or you just want to seek counsel, I could definitely put you into contact with her.
So she can review our policy and make sure it's up to stuff. 201-012 is acceptable use policy for computers, cell phones, and other electronic communications. This is what I was speaking about before, where it's double duty. We should combine them all and work on an updated policy. And this one is quite lengthy, 'cause it talks about copyright, site ownership, and all of that. And I believe now we really are forced to update this because we, the town of Dayton, have a Facebook page. We have to
Have
spell
what?
out, we have a Facebook page
Right.
from the town, so
Yeah,
we
right.
have to spell out rules as to how we're gonna use it. And the last policy in this chunk, this group, is 201-13, talking about vacation requests. So I guess this is another, it references just the clerical union. I believe the clerical union only, I'm not sure. So we either move this into the union, what this is approval for vacation, I'm sorry. Move this into a union contract or rewrite so that it applies to everybody in the
Maybe
town,
just a
or
reference
strike
to
it
the-
entirely,
just, if anything, just a reference to the three or the 3-4
how it's laid out, yeah.
rather than
This
try and
is-
detail this.
I guess I was looking for clarification on whether or not this did extend to the whole town or just the clerical union.
Well, I think we'd have to look at each one though, because this is spelled out in the clerical union, I know that. I don't know how it's spelled out in the others. So I think we should look at,
I'm blanking on the police, I've read
There are
that like,
provisions for carryover, so I think each contract's got a little thing in there, and about notice,
right.
and about order of, if two people ask for vacation,
who
that whole
gets it.
thing. So maybe just a general statement or something.
Like each
Reference- just a
department will
reference
fall under
Back
the
to the
collective.
CBAs that are
Yeah.
applicable.
And that is it for this
that
section.
wasn't so bad, it's gonna be more difficult.
I tried to go as fast as I could.
You did good.
Nobody wants to hear about this.
So to my colleagues, do we want to act on any of this evening, or do we want to maybe take it under advisement until maybe next week or the week after? Because it is a lot of information.
Well, I'm willing to accept the recommendations that were just made,
Were presented this
that
evening?
were presented this evening. So
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we accept the recommendations of the town administrator with the information or the additional information and suggestions that we provided.
Second.
All right. Discussion. I'd just like to say I totally agree. And I know this is a lot for you to take on in the middle of budget season. I just wanted to thank you for balancing everything. I know it's a lot, but you're doing a great job, and we appreciate it.
This one doesn't have to be done by June 30th.
I got 3 out of 4. This is number 4. So now it's like a race.
That's a biggie,
This is
no.
more than you can get done by.
So we have a motion and a second. We had our discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it, the motion passes.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for your patience.
Oh, you're very welcome.
I want to read about it.
Okay, next on the agenda is the Board of Selectmen budget recommendations, which kind of is continuing from next week. However, we do have a specific agenda item, which is to discuss the reorganization of the harbor master. I would like to throw that to the town administrator. I'm actually not quite sure what it is, so if you don't
Sure.
mind, Madam
I'll take it away.
Administrator.
And I'm just, before I get to that, I'm not going to I'm going to say that, but we do need to revisit the Board of Selectmen's budget because of the commingled account for Comcast, our cable, our internet,
Yep.
and our phones. So we will have to revisit the previous budget. Okay, regarding the harbor master, so perhaps reorganization was a bad word to use. It was discussed that the harbor master function be placed under the under the police department, but there was no actual vote taken. We did verify in minutes, it was not a vote. So we need a vote and to go forward of how we're gonna lay out the function of the harbor master. In my talking with him, we had a great conversation, I thought, and my liability flag is waving. I'm not really comfortable with the harbor master going out on the boat by himself, or whoever it is. And I'd like to always have a second person. So if this does move under the police department, perhaps the second person could be a law enforcement official, and they go out together. And that person would be able to generate a report should there be an accident, or address maybe a rowdy crew. I sound like pirates, but address an incident on the river. So that's my recommendation, that there be two. Also with his budget, we have a correction to be made. What was submitted was 1,020. When the town accountant verified all the payroll figures as we had asked her to do, it should be 1,040 and 40 cents for both the harbor master budget.
What department is that?
That is
$295.
$295.
May you just
So it
repeat
says-
that correct
yes.
number again?
So this would be the top two personnel lines. They were submitted as 1020. They need to just be 1,040 and 40 cents, both of them. Both lines are the same. And so my recommendations would be updated to reflect that change as well.
It is page 9 of 16. I actually have one question regarding the public safety official that would accompany the harbor master.
That's just my recommendation.
Which is, no, it's a sound recommendation. My question, I guess, or concern would be, have we spoke to the police chief, and does he have the capability to allow someone to do that?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
I mean, what I would suggest is I think we should approve the harbor master budget becoming under the chief, and then should let the chief make recommendations in conjunction with you back to how he wants to do it.
Yes.
Does that sound reasonable?
It's reasonable to me.
9, yeah, just.
And the harbor master is here.
Yeah, I would like to open the floor to our harbor master, Mr. Ron Marino. Before we start, I just wanted to thank you for all that you do, sir. All right, if you have the floor, sir.
I just have one question, Ron, before you start. Does it have to be a police officer? Can it be another harbor master? Because he's got 2 assistants.
Well, part of the discussion was about carrying a firearm and that kind of thing. So, I mean, it's up to you. Mine is just a law enforcement.
I think the chief should weigh in on that. Yeah.
We're still indicted, right?
Yes. I'm just uncomfortable with you being out there by yourself. I don't know, what if you
Public,
fall over?
I will give the public a chance to speak, but I did give the floor to Mr. Marino, so I just want to know if you have anything you'd like to share. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's a good idea to a certain extent. In the instance of public safety or safety of the town employees, it's always helpful to have a police officer stand next to you. The reality of being able to coordinate a set time frame may be difficult to do. The officers, typically on the weekend, I won't speak to their schedules, but I don't think they have too many extras floating around. The ones they have are in cars and dispatched throughout the community. If I have a need, or the assistant has a need, or we think we may require their assistance, situation might give us pause and say, maybe you should get some backup. We immediately radio in, because we are radio dispatched to the police department, and we radio in for assistance or for backup. And that has worked beautifully. I don't think we've ever waited more than 2 minutes. You know, we had one instant that was at night in the dark, couldn't find each other. The issue was resolved. I would love to have the officers join us on the boat so that we could learn from them. To have them on the boat on a rotating schedule will be difficult because as harbor masters, we go based on the weather, the traffic density, the time of day, the day, Monday through Friday after dinner, when people get out of work, they come home, generally out for a light cruise. There's not a lot of traffic. Weekends, there's more traffic, but it's spotty. You know, and I did talk with the chief the other day about this, and there are times when we might go up and down the river 10 times and not see a single moving boat. So we might say, well, look, it's 12 o'clock on a Saturday. Everybody who's going out has gone out, and they're somewhere. So we might radio in Harbor Master's boat back on the dock, and we basically do a visual between Alex and myself through the remainder of the day. And if the traffic density increases, then we'll get back on the boat and go out. So it's going to be difficult to try to coordinate with the police department a set schedule. Like I said, we welcome the opportunity to work with them on the boat, the officers on the boat. Anytime, we'd love to train more with them and the fire department on the water. But I think it really boils down to the chief and what he knows he has for resources and how he could expend those resources out on the water. And you know, whatever recommendations he has, I'm all ears and I'd love to hear it. And both Alex and myself and Mark are excited to work with them, however that worked out.
Yeah, I think I agree with our town administrator. I think safety, 2 people on a boat is always a good idea, no matter where you are, because I mean, even when you're fishing, you shouldn't be out there by yourself.
Right.
So somebody falls over, and then what do you do?
Right.
But I do think it's something that I don't think it's really our place to make those rules. I think that's something the chief should
The
take
three
care
of us, in the Harbor Master group, we do try to coordinate our schedules so that we can go together. Always try to get two. It doesn't always work out. But towards the latter part of last year, both Alex and I, because we live right there, he's my neighbor half a dozen doors down, we're able to actually get together and go as a pair. You know, like you said, it's safer, it's helpful, it's easier to do the patrols that way. If we're available, we do it.
Madam.
So that, oh, I'm
No,
sorry.
no, you, absolutely.
So the preferred way is to have the two of you, or whoever it is. but
It's always
two-
better to go out with
okay.
more than one person, yeah.
How, but in your action, you know, we're going on the boat, it's automatic, you're gonna call one of them, or they're gonna call you, whatever, to go to on a boat. And if they can, they go, but if
Yes.
they can't, okay.
Yes.
How often can they not? Or I guess, like, what's the percentage that you're out there? I mean, 60% of the time? 80% of the time?
Like I said, it's weather dependent, it's the time of day, it's the day of the week. You know, if we look out there and there's no traffic, it doesn't make sense for us to be out in the town boat just burning fuel.
Right, and I'd agree with that. And I understand what you're saying about scheduling a police officer, you know, that makes
So
sense.
I
but
can't give you a percentage number.
So my question would be then, out of all the times that somebody's out on the water,
Mhm.
what's the percentage of time that there's 2 of you in the boat?
I couldn't answer that because, you know, are we out at night after dinner?
No, I'm talking about any time a boat is out.
When you've actually gone. when you're-
Percentage, probably 20?
Okay.
20% of the time,
Maybe
there's
20%.
2,
Yeah,
20%.
yeah.
I have a logistical question for Madam Administrator. Harbor Master Marino's here expressing a little bit of, I don't know what the proper word is, but maybe the time frame may not work. Did Chief McDonald also express some reservations
I mean-
about not being able to make this work logistically with his rank and file?
No, but I mean, I think we just want to make sure there's safety. If that requires that we hire some more reserves and reserves can do it, you know, I think there's ways to make it happen, although these are good points. There's not like a scheduled patrol time, but maybe we can work on what's the busiest time that you're gonna be on the river, and maybe that can just be put in. But of course, it's a collaborative effort. But the first step is we need to actually have a vote of whether or not this does fall under the police department.
Right.
And
Oh,
if
yeah.
it does fall under the police department, then a collaborative effort between, which I am hearing, I think that you're willing to do, and the other two are willing to do it, and figure it out for the best interest of the town. But that vote does need to take place if that's the
To
case.
follow up on that
Harbormaster
last
Marino.
portion, I'm all in favor, so long as we're allowed to maintain our roles as harbor masters and assistant harbor masters and continue to do the function that we've been doing. I don't want to get squeezed out.
Right.
Selectman Goulart.
Don't mean to offend you, but I'm gonna take the cheap approach.
Okay, go ahead.
If we have 2 harbor masters on the boat, we've got 3 in total. Maybe they can arrange some kind of flexibility. But the cheap approach is, quite frankly, you get 2 on the boat, you've got the coverage, there's no one alone, and we're not paying these guys like we would be paying reserves or police officers. So if I've also offended reserves and police officers, I'm sorry. But I gotta look at this from a financial practicality, okay? Other than the harbor masters, who do get a small stipend, anyone else on that boat that is compensated, the money's gotta be budgeted. So, I'm looking for coverage, I'm looking for safety, I'm looking for security, and I'm looking at the cheap approach.
That is a good point. Thank you, Selectman Goulart.
Is there gonna be time for public input at some point?
I'll just let
I think we
Selectman
should get,
Taylor.
I think
and
we should
then-
get the first thing off the table. and
Okay.
that is where the
Well, I'm
organiza-
accepting a motion, so.
Okay, I would make a motion that the harbor master come under the purview of the chief of police, or the police department.
I'll second it for discussion purposes.
Okay, discussion.
Can we all discuss
All of
it?
the, all of the, I don't know how, all of the rules and regulations you have to follow, will that all fit in with police department umbrella?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well, if we have the police department here and the harbor department here, harbor master department here, and now it's gonna be the police department here and the harbor master department here, you got rules and regs that you have to follow on the water and to do your job. So does that work together with police?
It does. It falls under the
Okay,
chapter 90B, although it's many sections in 90B, on-road, off-road, ATV, motorcycle,
Right.
snowmobile, I know nothing of.
Okay,
And then there's a section on water under 90B,
okay,
which I do feel comfortable knowing a lot of.
okay.
And the police officers would probably say the same thing.
Okay,
I mean, they wouldn't expect you to like to go in a patrol car, and, you know, and because you, I mean, you might go in it as assistants, but you wouldn't know the laws of it, nor would the police know
Right.
all the harbor master laws, so
Right.
it could be, I see it as a compliment to each other.
I just wanna make sure it's gonna work, that's all.
It would.
Okay.
You know, but there's a whole can of worms as far as compensation, a budgeted time slot. You know, to what extent would they be involved on the water, not being knowledgeable of the rules on the water? Just as if, as Selectman Taylor pointed out, if I were in the passenger seat of a cruiser and the officer made a stop, I basically would be an observer. So is there a value to the town to essentially have an observer?
I would say yes.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Also,
absolutely. And if it's a police officer, I think even better. But you have some other comments.
I just wanted to say before I am going to open this up to the public before the three of us vote this evening, but I also don't see them as an observer. They're still law enforcement, whether they're on land or by water. Now, I totally agree. Nobody knows the rules of the water better than the harbor master and the three folks who are in that department. But I do think they're still law enforcement. But again, you know the rules of the road on the high seas. So.
Having an officer on board is a tremendous help to us when we have to make a stop, because it immediately seems to diffuse the situation. Whether it's we haven't had a local police officer, but when we've had the environmental police, nobody does anything wrong. But when they're not on the boat, then things tend to go haywire. You know, we've done our best to dress the part, dress consistently, appropriately. We're getting better at it. but it's still not the same thing as having a fully uniformed officer with a duty belt and vest. Nothing beats that.
Sir, I'm gonna call on you in just a moment. I wanted to ask a question for clarification. To Selectman Goulart's point, when we were discussing that the chief of police already had the staff available, you weren't saying we were gonna hire someone, because what I was saying was, I'm okay with utilizing folks we're already paying and it's already budgeted, to be on the boat. I wasn't here advocating for us to hire someone specifically to do that.
I foresee this to be like an impact bargaining thing, because they could argue this is a change of duty.
Of course.
So there's that, but, I mean, if we are asking at least 2 people to be on the boat, and even if it is 2 harbor masters, I think we should increase their, I mean, they'd be out more just by virtue of mandating that. They would be expending more hours, so we would have to increase that. There's surrounding this whole thing, if you make a change, there's going to be an increase in finance.
I think we need to identify what's the safety issue, and then we need to figure out if we believe strongly that that's the safety issue, then we need to figure out how to pay for it.
I want to, sorry.
2 people, the harbor master and somebody, okay, qualified to be there, whether it's another harbor master or a reserve or a police officer, whatever. If the policy is going to be 2 people on the boat, always on the boat, okay? No one goes out alone. Do you see any problem with arranging schedules between your crew and the chief as far as assignments? Do you see that working out, or see problems?
Because we have other full-time jobs. That's how we make our livings. We
Right,
make
right,
our
I
living
understand
on the water.
Right.
Whereas the police officers make their living every day in and out of the station. If the department said, look, we can give you an officer every Friday from 4 to 7.
Like a busy time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or Saturday morning from 8 to noon. Alex may not be available because he has landscaping business in the summertime. I might not be available for whatever reason. Mark may not be available. His job takes him into Boston for what he does at seasonal times of the year. So I don't see that we would have that level of flexibility because essentially we're not retired and just there all the time. So
I wanted to add one thing.
the other thing is, what if this became a policy where it's always 2, no less than 2, the number shall be 2, and we don't have 2? Can't go out violating town policy.
Well, I would think that common sense would prevail if there's an
But
emergency.
if there's a big policy, I agree.
But the other thing is that if nobody's around, these police officers, we would train them to know how to operate the boat, because if somebody needs to go out, they need to go out.
Yep.
So if you guys aren't around, that would be a police function to help, so.
I want to open it up to the public if it's okay with my colleagues. Sir, thank you
That
for
goes
being
to my
patient.
question is, how many calls? I mean, we're talking about all this expense and everybody's gonna run around.
Sir,
You gotta introduce
How many
remind me of
actions?
your name and your
Oh, my name's Jeff Ashcraft, 715 Spring Street, North Dayton.
Thank you, sir.
I just was wondering, how many genuine calls do we get in a year? I know last year, I spoke with you, it was 3. And so we're doing all this running around for 3 calls in a year. Huh? What are we doing? Sorry.
No, it's okay. Thank you, Mr. Ashcroft.
I mean, we're all jumping into hoops, jumping over hoops. We don't even need it to begin with.
Hi, Brand Cedrone, Lincoln Ave. Can we just fix this? Before we go any further,
I wish you would, thank you so
keep those
much.
cards and letters coming, folks, to the right people. I mean, the town administrator wants to put a lawyer on the boat too. Why don't we make it 3? You'd probably vote for that too, right?
That's not what
Why don't we have a lawyer on the boat and a cop? Maybe an assistant district attorney while we're at it?
But let's just deal with what she actually said, not.
Now, wait a minute. Now, if there was a police officer here tonight, said this was a special town meeting, it's 4 hours minimum. Wherever they go, it's 4 hours minimum. So every time somebody's on the boat with him, if he needs them for 10 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, it's 4 hours minimum
That's how it is
for a
now.
police officer?
So that's how it is
It would
right
just,
now.
they would go
This would
back
be
to their
assigned.
land duties, correct?
Yeah, that's
How
it
many
is
times
now.
has anybody been hurt, in your knowledge, Ron? Even in prior harbor masters, when there was only one person on the boat, has anybody ever been even injured?
Only one that I know of, and that was this past winter in Quincy. He fell in the water and almost froze. to
Right, but
death.
that wasn't Dayton, that was, yeah, that's all harbor masters.
I don't know of any others.
Before I call on Mr. Ashcroft again, what this board is discussing right now is just simply not to put another person on the boat. We're just discussing whether or not to put the department under the police department. That's all. Mr. Ashcroft.
I'm just wondering, how did we get to this point that we need a police officer on the boat? What, I must have missed something.
I am not getting to the point where we need a police officer on the boat.
No, but
I
that's
heard it,
prevention.
That's what
I
we
met
were at
with-
last year, right?
what was that?
She
Is that what
wasn't
we
here
did
last year. She wasn't here.
I'm asking them.
No, this second body person, I'm hearing about this for the first time tonight. This has not been brought up before.
Didn't we
It's
have the
new to
police
us.
involved on the boat last year?
When the police are needed, they call the police. I'm talking Dayton Police. I'm also saying when they need environmental police are there. So they respond, but they aren't part of, I'll call it, they aren't part of the crew.
But I see him responding to Somerset with the environmental police. And I wondered, what is that?
Again,
You know,
thank
there's
you.
something wrong.
Thank you, Mr. Ashcroft. And I don't mean to sidestep what you're saying, but again, I just want to remind everyone, all we're voting on right now is whether or not to put the harbor master under the police department.
So I'm sorry that I brought it up.
No.
It's my job to tell you where there's liability.
Yeah.
So if you go overboard, I don't want you to freeze to death. I want somebody else to be there and say, hey, 911, our harbor master's in the river, freezing to
Great.
death. So that's.
Harbor Master Marino, my question for you is, on this vote that we're about to take, do you have any reservations with the harbor master being under the police department? Okay. So it
Have you been asked, now I'm gonna put you on the spot, Ron. Have you been asked for your recommendation? Because I'd like to know.
My recommendation would be to keep it where it was, because I've been doing this for over 21 years, and it hasn't been a problem.
I agree with you, Harbor Master Marino, and again, I mean it when I say I thank you for what you do for the town. My only issue is, to me, like not being out on the boat, it is a public safety department. That's just my personal opinion. And again, I appreciate you being the public safety official on the boat. But again, to me, I feel like this is a public safety issue. And if either of my colleagues would like to respond before we take the vote.
I have a comment.
Mr. Woods and then Mr. Christofouli, and then Mrs. Simbalesti.
Ladies first.
Allison Semelisti. My son Alex is an assistant, works with Ron. I've been a resident in town for over 50 years, living on the water. Been on the water since I was 8 years old. I now kayak a lot. I've seen increased boat traffic, both motorboats, kayakers. It's a beautiful place to live. I think they do a fine job with all the increased traffic, keeping things, keeping the speed down. When I'm out there, I feel safer. When I know that they're doing safety checks, making sure people have the proper equipment. I think that is what the role of the harbor master used to be, and now, of course, it's a lot more involved. I know they do call the police when they need to have an intervention or they've stopped people where they need some help. I know they have been out with the environmental police as well. My question is why now, after all this time, when there's been no real issues with safety on the water, why now we need to put this under the police department? And my biggest concern is expense, obviously, as you said, Nancy. They're paid a stipend, their budget is very low, they provide a service, they're appointed, they volunteer their time, and to be honest, most of the, a stipend, yes, and most of the time it involves nights, weekends, and holidays, and that's when you want them out there, so that you can be safe when there's recreational boating going on. I just think that it's worked well. I don't see why we as taxpayers have to have extra money spent to have officers on the boat, and I think the coordination would be difficult. I see them operate and how they operate all the time since Alex is involved, and I don't see how that would work, to be honest with you.
Before I move on to Mr. Woods, because he is next, I just wanted to say, again, this vote is just to put them under the police department, and before we vote, I did make sure to ask Harbor Master Marino if he was okay with the Harbor Master being under the police department. I know he expressed reservations about having perhaps a police officer on there all the time, but in terms of just putting them under the police department, he seemed okay with that. Sure. And then Mr. Woods.
Can I ask, why would the board and Ms. Amnesty want the harbor master budget under the police department now, when it hasn't been since it was created?
I
can
wasn't
answer that,
talking about the
actually.
budget.
I was told that it was
just talking
supposed to be
about-
under there, and then in researching it, there was no vote, and it needs to be a vote of the Board of Selectmen. That's why
You were
it's here.
told it's
So that-
supposed to be by law?
No.
Or just somebody?
No,
My
all that
preference.
goes under the, all that goes under the police department.
But,
Well,
but
in-
why would you
in
want it
research.
when it never was before, and all of a sudden they want to change this for some reason? Somebody wanted to put this under the police department. Why is that?
The board wanted to put it in the police department.
Why
Just
did the
wanted to-
board want to do that?
Chairman
First of all, I
Turner.
think that it's a law enforcement
Mhm.
function,
Right?
which should be under the police,
It is law
police chief.
enforcement.
Should be under the police chief. It gives more structure to it, it gives more supervision to it, it gives more resources to it. And so, not
But we-
necessarily more cost,
But
not
we have
necessarily.
the same resources
We're
with a
talking,
phone
we're talking
call.
about two
Hold on
different
one
things.
moment.
We're talking about two different things. We're talking about, should it come under the police budget? And then the other thing we're talking about is really way off that subject, whether we should have two people on there or not. So I'm responding to your question and responding to the discussion that we have is, should it be under the police department? Not how many people should be on it or any of that. Just who where should it be?
I hear your answer, and if it's law enforcement should be under the other law enforcement, I support that 100%. It's basically an accounting thing.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And
Nothing more
I
than
would
that.
also
It
add,
ends at that.
in the very first time I met you, you stopped by and you mentioned frustrations about not being able to get training. I would think this being under the police department would open up avenues for the training that you want. I see this as a positive, but I'm just doing some housekeeping. It needs to be a vote.
Town Administrator Aaronstein, colleagues, it is already almost 9 o'clock, so I would like to get this vote, but I do want to hear from the public. Mr. Woods, ma'am, and I think you also, Mr. Christopherly, had something to say. Mr. Woods?
Okay, I'll be brief. Maybe they could get a couple of more harbor masters to help them out with the manpower. And as far as the stipend that they got, that position as harbor master was always an honorary position. They were never paid. There was never a budget line. I think their budget was $200 a year to pay for gasoline. And, I'm quite sure that you could get other residents to volunteer, not looking to get paid. Our Park and Recreation Department meets every month. They do a lot of work. None of them people get paid a dime.
Well, they did it one time.
They did it one time, but they haven't been paid in I don't know.
Well,
how many
that's
years.
because we found out it was illegal to do it, quite frankly.
Right.
So I think we need to let that one rest.
No, it wasn't illegal. I want to correct that statement right there.
Please, and be brief, Mr. Rhines. We're really off track.
When the Recreation Department was the Playground Commission and changed the name, the wording changed, no stipend was allowed. We were not, no one was paid legally all that time. I just want to get that out.
Thank you, Mr. Rhines.
Clarification.
Mr. Ashcroft, did you have anything to add?
You know what? No.
Okay, ma'am.
See where it's going.
And thank you for being patient.
Can I make one statement? Sure. Earlier I heard that he wanted to carry a weapon on board the boat, but he doesn't want to be under the police station, doesn't think it qualifies. What would you carry a weapon? You're not going to be a type of police officer. If you're going to carry a weapon, you certainly need all that training.
I don't think we're talking about anybody
Yeah.
carrying a weapon.
And that's
I
more
understand.
money.
But again, that's not what we're discussing. Miss, thank you for being patient. It's okay, Mr. Ashcroft.
Thank you, Claire. I live on Park Ave, so I'm right on the river. What makes it, once you put them under the police department, once makes the police chief say, hey, I can use that money for something else, and there goes our.
That's not his
No, no,
choice.
no.
That's,
Well, it's
that's
not
us.
a line item under the budget, it's this harbor master budget being under the purview of the
So
police
that's
chief.
gonna be
It's not a
spelled
line.
out clearly that it can't,
Well-
they
Right,
can't
well,
affect
I know
that.
you probably can't see this, but this says police department and communications department. So the police chief ends up submitting both of these because both budgets come under, but you at town meeting are gonna vote police department, communications, harbor master. It just, it's literally accounting.
And
It's
and
probably
that's also,
perfect.
I'm sorry, that's also our function and our town administrator's function
I
to
just
make
wanna
sure
make
that
sure
that's
we
good.
don't lose our harbor master.
It's not a line item that could be expended somewhere else. It's a full-on budget by itself.
Because it's very important when you live on the river to see what's going on and what happened.
Before we take a vote, I just wanted to add from what, absolutely, from what you were saying this evening, Harbor Master Marino, my impression was that your concern here tonight, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, was that this was being used as a cover for marginalizing or removing the harbor master. And what I want to tell you is the reason I support putting this under the police department is because I genuinely feel like you both can enrich each other and learn from one another. You're going to teach them, you know, the rules of the, I keep saying the road, the high seas.
It is the rules of the road.
And they're going to teach you perhaps a little bit about law enforcement. And I think this is a great thing. This
We would
is what
embrace that.
interdepartmental communication is all about here tonight. It's not one or the other is what I'm trying to say.
We would love to have that.
Any last comments? I'm almost scared to ask. Mr. Crucifulli.
Sure, Frank Crucifulli, 1730 Wellington Street. Certainly the role of the harbor master is a law enforcement role and should be covered under the police department. I think there's also a requirement for additional transparency. We spent a lot of money, a special town meeting, acquiring a boat. Like to see, you know, how are we using that, what type of hours. It was moored last season at a private dock. We probably should move out to Charlotte Boat Yard. I think also if the harbor master comes under the police department, there could be more visibility. The police are going down to the boat ramp and driving down Pleasant Street, down Water Street. They'll have more eyes on the water. As a boater, I spend a lot of time on the water. I have concerns with the lack of presence of the harbor master during the week. It's when folks are out there screwing around on jet skis, creating wakes. The weekend, you know, that's kind of, you know, there's a lot of presence. That's squelched. I certainly see other times of the week where there's more violations and more risk of a public safety matter. So, that's my thoughts.
We have a motion and a second. I didn't forget. And again, this vote is to vote to put the harbor master department under the police department. So we have a motion and a second. We've certainly had discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Abstentions? The ayes have it. The motion passes. Whew. Thank you, Harbor Master Marino, and thank you for your patience.
Okay, back to the budget. So we last left off at police. You voted all of general government. That's gone over to the finance committee. Police department. The negotiations with the police union are currently ongoing. So at this rate, I don't.
Excuse me. Sorry, gentlemen. Gentlemen, we are still conducting a meeting, please. Thank you. Madam Administrator.
6 of 16, page 6 of 16. Police department, the negotiations are currently ongoing for the police union, so that figure may change, probably not until special town meeting. There is one change to my recommendations. I had, I believe this is a typo, I recommended to cut the gasoline and diesel line. I thought that it was a little bit high. The police chief told me that he didn't think that, I cut it by 22,000 from 36. He thought that was too steep. Looking at it again, I agree, because the prior year, it must have been a typo, I guess, because the prior year, I tried to use historical spending, was 24,000. So he felt comfortable leaving it at 30, which would be a $6,000 decrease.
Because
So
I would
that
agree,
is
because
a
I also, you're talking about prices going up this summer.
Right.
so.
So. And then the other line to watch there is the custodial and housekeeping supplies, just as I mentioned last meeting, that is currently going out to bid.
So 6,000 is what we're paying now?
Yes, that's what the request was. It's a level funded from previous year.
And does that include the old town hall?
No, this is just for police.
I'm sorry.
This is
I'm
just
sorry, I'm
for the
thinking-
police station.
Yeah, got it.
And again, this is a little bit of a guess because of the new station,
Right.
which is expected to open November.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, communications department, I don't
Before we
believe it.
move on,
Oh,
Selectman
sorry.
Goulart, did you have anything about the police? Okay, we'll move on.
Communications department, I cut down the salary and service training. The request was 7, I went to 5. And I'm
What
just
line?
verifying that that's the only change.
What
Line
line was
item is
that?
Under, it's the first one under the expenses, it's 5151, training.
yes.
Previous years, they, it was $2,300 they spent in training, and they had not spent that much in their budget year-to-date. So I thought 5 was a safe number. You had made that recommendation that people take the town up on the tuition reimbursement, so I left it in there just in case.
So what is the number that should be on that line?
You mean the training line?
Yes, what's the new?
3,000 is what I,
Okay, that's
hold
what's
on,
there.
hold on. I'm sorry, I gave you the wrong line. The salary in service training, so it's line 5190 under personnel. The department request was 7,000, I recommend it at 5,000. And I believe, again, with, it's a level funded from previous requests.
Thank you.
And that is the only change to that budget. I don't know if you want to do what you did last time and go by page, or if you want me to keep going.
Colleagues, I'm okay with page.
Yeah, page front.
All right. I'm accepting motions.
Well, okay. I'll make a motion that we accept the budget with the corrections that the town administrator has provided us for the police department and communication department.
I have a motion. Do I have a
Wait a
second?
minute, I'm looking for the rest
Oh,
of
no
this.
problem.
I got a blank page here.
Yours is weird.
Sorry, folks.
We're just gonna do this page first, page 6.
Where's the rest of
Does
public
that happen
safety?
to be,
We usually do public safety in total, like we did general government, so we should do the rest of
Yeah.
public
okay,
safety.
that was my
So what
question.
page is that on?
Now we're on 7, so we'll start with fire department, 220 at the top.
I have a note there you can just cross off, because we did add the clothing allowance. So the fire chief is requesting clerical assistants have to be paid out of the fire department and have to be, Selectman Goulart, is that the documentation that was received at the finance committee meeting?
Yeah,
Okay,
I got a,
that's,
I don't see page 7.
Yeah, I don't see her page 6.
This is the one we worked on last
not-
night.
yeah.
All right, let me try another one. I got a stack of them here. Sooner or later, we'll hit the right one. Okay. Page 7, if I can
The one
find
that's
7.
dated 4/3.
Other way, yep. And then flip a couple. Should be the next one.
I don't,
Ta-da! Okay.
can you just verify, I don't believe that.
What's the
Does
date?
that
What's
have
the date in the
No,
corner?
not the date. Look at the top, it says TA Rex, RACS,
Yep.
and notes. Is that there?
Yep. Nope.
No, that's not the one we're looking at.
You wanna look on
What
the
does
thing?
yours say? How many columns have you got? That's the problem with
This
having
is
too
the
many
one,
of these.
yeah, it's too many paper. This is the one that I
See
presented
how
to
there's
you.
like the TA Rex?
If you can take, I can go make a copy of this so that you
No,
can
no, I
have-
got more here. I just gotta find it. I got one March 28th that's got TA
That's
Rex
the one
on
I'm
it.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yep.
Okay.
No, it's not, no.
And then it's page
Page
7. No, no, no.
Not the, 4/3 is the date. It's gotta have 4/3 in the bottom right corner.
The one I'm on is 328.
Oh,
I've been
wait a minute,
using
let me see what this
328.
is. All right, here's 4/3.
Okay, if nothing's
Whoops,
changed,
there's another one.
this is,
That's
you
the
gave
one
me
with the
yesterday.
blank page in it.
That's what,
Yeah, no,
that's
that one,
updated if it's.
I don't use this one. I use the
Whatever.
one you're about to use, the 328,
We'll do this
2018.
differently next year.
Okay,
Sorry, public.
that 4/3 doesn't have a page 7, so I can't use that.
Yeah, I've been using, this is the one I
Use the 320, okay, okay.
All right, Sorry, public, we're rocking and rolling. Madam
Oh,
Administrator.
we're rocking.
And say, are you all set on the other ones, or do you want me to just?
No, the police were on the other
You're good.
page. It's this, I gotta miss the page here. All right, okay.
Alright, so fire department. The fire, everyone I believe has heard this, the fire chief is looking for a medical billing assistant who would do half of the clerical work so half funded through the fire department budget and half funded through the ambulance budget. So that's reflected here in.
Madam Administrator, Mike, do you mind? Thank you. Sorry, Madam Administrator. I know.
So the, now you have me thinking I have the wrong one. I
No,
don't. Okay, I know that I don't. All right.
There's the billing assistant.
The billing assistant, so that's who that is.
Yeah, it's highlighted. It's got a,
Yes, so that's the new, and you'll see that it's half in both. Again, I went to the gasoline line. I'm just trying to get the number, 5481, and level funded it. He upped it by $300. I mean, I know it's not a lot, but I didn't support that. And then again, the fire vehicular supplies, again, he upped it by $300, and I just level funded it. That was my recommendations. And I believe that is about it. I support.
You talked about that, you told me what you did.
Yeah.
I have one question about this.
Sure.
Line 5481, gasoline and diesel fuels.
5481, yes, 13.
Chief requested, or excuse me, it wasn't him at the time, I don't
Oh,
believe.
no. Yeah, that's a typo.
So-
6,000, that's not right.
He's asking for $13,300. Your recommendation's for $6,000, but this year alone, from January 1st to June 30th in 2018, they've already expended $10,000,
That
way
is
over.
nope, that's the FY18 estimated expenses.
It's estimated.
Oh, okay, I know what you're saying.
The year-to-date on this document goes till December 31st was 2,300. I still don't believe it. I mean, maybe 6 is probably, looking at it, is probably a little too conservative. I don't think it needs to be 13.
Okay.
So if, maybe a happy medium between 6,000 and 13.
I just want to make sure they have enough, would be my
absolutely.
only concern.
But yeah, that 10,000 is not what he's expended to date.
So what he's actually expended is $2,301, correct?
To December 31st.
And you're confident that they would only probably do like half that? That's why you kind of gave yourself room with the 6,000?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a lot of room, and what I'm saying, not looking at it now, it might be too conservative, and maybe bring it to 10, and it still be a cut of 3,300. Okay.
I think we're gonna get the April numbers, the March numbers very shortly, and I think we should look at that, and see what's happened. Because this is only the 12/31 that we're looking at.
Selectman Goulart?
I think fuel is too low. I don't have a magic number, but
Low at 6,000,
Oh,
correct?
yeah.
Okay,
Low,
that's
right.
what I'm.
So are you throwing out 8,000 as a number, or you want to
Or even
revisit when?
9,000? And then we can scale it back from there, based on
Sure.
what Selectman Taylor said when we actually get the actual expenses.
Sure, okay.
Is everybody okay with that?
what's the number?
I was thinking 9,000, and then we can scale it back once we see the March numbers.
I'd be more comfortable with 10 if we're gonna scale it back,
I'm fine with that.
because that's still a $3,000 reduction.
I'm okay with that.
The other thing I wanted to mention was, up here, the person, the position that's been
Highlight.
put in here for billing and administration, assistance.
Yes.
Should we just have billing under the ambulance services and have the administration up under the fire department, instead of the combined positions?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Well, it says salary, full-time billing / administrative assistant. I'm just wondering if we should just have under ambulance billing, because that's really related to the ambulance, and the administrative assistant part be put up under the chief's budget, separate them out. No, change the dollars, but change the break,
I'm okay with that.
the budget line title.
I'm okay with that too, I just have a clarification. It's still one job?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Oh,
thank you.
absolutely.
Yep, I
It's almost like having a part-time person in both places that equals one.
Full-time, yeah, that makes
That
sense.
was a good call, Selectman Goulart. Madam Administrator?
I lowered ambulance billing fees. I know this is the ambulance budget, but ambulance billing fees could potentially go down because of the hiring of this clerk. So it's just a line to watch right now, because we don't know what town meeting will do. But it's,
Which line, where is that line?
that's under ambulance, it's line 5302,
5302.
ambulance billing fees.
Oh, I got it.
My only comment or concern, I don't know if it's really a concern with that, would be, I have never been a selectman where we've had an ambulance biller. I can't remember if you were here, Selectman Goulart, before they got rid of that position.
That individual was terminated just before I came, because that's when the,
Well,
But if
that's
we-
when the problem started.
If we're doing all the billing, why would there be billing fees?
Well, I think to clarify, I agree with what you're saying. Right now, we got a service, so there's fees.
right.
So it's a budget item. However, even if tonight's June 30th and tomorrow's July 1, and the new person comes on July 1, there are outstanding claims that that billing service is going to attempt to collect. So they will get some kind of a fee. Eventually, it's going to go away, and I think it's going to drop quickly once we get our own person. But they're still going to be chasing 90 days or 120 days.
Absolutely
So,
correct.
but it is definitely going to decrease.
This is likely to be too high, though, is what my point.
Right, but that's, I just want to flag it. And then
Yeah,
also, if
flag
town
it.
meeting says, no, we don't want to hire somebody there, and we zero out our
Yeah,
ambulance
you're
billing
still gonna
fees,
have-
we're in
yeah.
trouble.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we'll be sure
We
to
did-
remind them about the
but that would-
receivables before
Yeah,
we ask for that vote.
and then what,
That would be a discussion at town
At
meeting.
town
If you want to
meeting.
get rid of this, we're going to have to get billing fees.
Correct. So,
And-
do we want to keep that? I'm sorry, I was actually elaborating on this. So is your recommendation to keep it at what was requested, and then we'll have a better idea after if they're approved and hired and all that, what it might be for the next budget?
exactly, it's just
Okay.
I'm flagging it down. There's a handful of those lines, because we're in such this period of such growth and change. We don't want to,
I think we should look at the billing fees and make some estimate, because it won't be 20,000.
well,
If
he
we hire some-
requested 22, and I dropped it to 20,
I know,
but then.
what did they spend last year, though?
The other thing too is, by the
About-
time
Selectman Goulart?
we have the fall special town meeting, we're gonna have, assuming at annual town meeting, this position passes and it's funded, they're gonna start relatively soon into the new fiscal year. By the time we get to that fall town meeting, we are going to know what we have outstanding that the old company will be working on. And we can actually have a vote, if the chief agrees, to reduce that line item in the budget with a special vote. We don't have to carry that money forward,
That's
Great,
a good
that's
point.
great.
so we can do that.
And then
Okay.
there's one other change, the gasoline and diesel fuel should be restored under my recommendations to 7,800, and not cut that.
Okay.
And I believe that
That's
is
ambulance,
it.
right? 50?
That's under the
Yep.
ambulance,
5481.
5481.
Okay.
Okay. Um,
Is this it for public safety, Madam Administrator?
in my document, public safety includes, building and
Oh,
all
okay.
of that, but if you want to take a vote.
Where is the break in the,
It goes all the way up to budget,
294.
299,
oh, just before education?
Oh, you're right.
right.
Okay, let's keep going.
Okay with that?
General government's a catch-all too, we did all that already.
Building, so as I had, the town accountant verified, she did a lot of work, and she verified all the pay salaries, thank you, or the salaries. And so the number she came up with but she calculated out for the building commissioner is slightly less than what he had, plopped in for himself, which, I don't mean that in disparaging way, but what he put in as a department request. So I just wanted to call that to your attention. He requested $71,500, and what she calculated out was $70,948.80.
So why
That would
wouldn't
be a
he
true 2% raise. You can see here, it's 2.73%
What-
increase.
Yeah, why
the
wouldn't it
flat
just be
2%?
2%?
Why would it just
Why
be-
wouldn't it just be 2%
I
like
don't-
everybody
It
else?
should be
I don't know,
2%.
that's
Why
I
would-
want to bring it to your
Exact number?
attention.
Yeah,
$70,948.80.
That's what I'm gonna support. I don't know about
No,
my
wait a minute.
colleagues.
What's the number again?
What's the number?
70,000?
$70,948.80.
And that's that's with the 2%, only
That
the 2%.
is the 2%
Okay,
calculated by the town
I
accountant.
agree with that.
7094840.
.80
Oh, 80.
Yep.
70948.80.
Mhm.
Okay.
Additionally, I reduced this overtime line by $2,500, which I think is a fair number.
To 4,000.
To 4,000.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
So that's the personnel. In having a conversation with him, I asked him if we could reduce the demolition of deteriorated structures. He had put in a request for a level fund of 30,000, and I asked if we could lower it, and he agreed to about 20,000. And that is the only change in his department request on the expenses part of that. The gas, or do you have any other questions?
I have one question. Did you, you don't have to answer because I don't mean to put you on the spot. Did you ask the building commissioner to lower it because you felt like we were demolishing too much? And I know sometimes, no, you know, sometimes you have, there's no choice. I totally get that.
Right, and it's not just, it's not just to like bring in a crane and a wrecking ball. This is for like boarding up unsafe houses. There's other things. I just asked him where we could give a little, and he said that he paces it in such a way that he can really control the costs there. So he's being nice and giving a little.
If between approval of this budget and the fall town meeting, if he has other properties that are gonna be on the list, he can come back and ask for money to do it.
And I believe that was actually done.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've done it more than once.
Because you never know what's coming down the
But
down the
thank you,
pipe.
Jim. He was kind enough to.
Thank you, building
so
commissioner.
I appreciate that. The gas inspector, the building commissioner, so if we do 242 and 243 and 245, they haven't had an increase in their rate in 6 years. It's $25 per inspection. He is proposing that it be $35 per inspection. You'll notice that the line for electrical inspector is much higher, but just by virtue of how many electric permits this individual will be called to.
But
Do we know what other, do we know what other towns are paying for these?
I did not do that.
I'd like to know
research.
that.
We can do that.
Yeah.
So
And
I just want to make sure I'm understanding this. So we're raising the fees to give these
No.
people
no, that's my
raises.
next comment. No, that's my next comment. It's, their pay is $35 per inspection. That was my first question to him. Are you now raising the fees for people to do business in town, people change their homes around? And he said no. He said he's confident they can absorb it.
Because I believe he's asked for salary increases for these positions before, and we
He
didn't
did.
agree to it.
Last year we did.
Did or
Correct.
did not?
He
agree?
did.
No,
We-
no.
he
and
didn't
you
agree to
Did
it.
not agree to it.
Correct.
Okay.
So I'd just like to get a sense, because I have no idea what the towns pay for these things.
All right.
So we will, if we vote on public safety, we will withhold 242, 243, and 245 is what you're proposing,
Well,
Selectman Taylor?
it might be easier to just hold off on 241, because there's a couple of changes that need to be made anyways. Right? Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, you're right, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
You're
24, gas
242,
inspection, plumbing
43, and
inspection,
44.
and electrical inspection.
And
Is
I
it
will just-
okay with you to hold
Fine
off
with
on
me.
those?
Sure.
Selectman Goulart, is it okay
Yeah.
with you?
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I will just say, I know this off the top of my head because it's West Bridgewater, but in West Bridgewater, they pay a monthly salary regardless. They can have 100, they can have 0, they get it per month,
How
just
much-
because
yeah, how much
that's
they
their
get?
post. I think it's a stipend. I don't want to misquote it, so I
Okay.
don't. See, look at that.
That'd be-
Newtown, all gone out the window.
Yeah.
I can
That'd be
find
something
that
worth
easily for you though.
understanding, right.
So I'll do a salary survey
Sounds
on
fine.
that? Okay.
So left, we have 244, 292, and 294?
Weights and measures, I believe is a selectman budget, I didn't change that. And, animal control officer. So the Board of Health brought in an updated salary figure today, and it was this afternoon, and I didn't have, an opportunity to speak with the Board of Health chairman about it. It seemed like he, from first glance, moved money from one budget and put it in here, but without having a conversation, if we're gonna hold them, I would just ask to hold this one as well.
Right.
The animal control officer?
Animal control officer, because put in a new request today, and I just haven't had time to vet it or ask him about it.
I'm okay with that. I do have one question before we kind of stifle the discussion on this, because we're gonna hold off. Assistant ACO, it's $2,200 is the request, but is it the goal of the Board of Health that we are going to hire and again, I'm a proponent of it, but I just wanted to know, do they have is there a plan?
So that wasn't clear in our meeting, and actually, and I'm sorry, I walked away thinking that we didn't have an assistant and we're not gonna need an assistant, and if we're gonna give the animal control officer an increase, how do we then advocate for an assistant? That's how I walked away from it.
Well, I can do both. I'd like to hear from Animal Control Officer Ferry on this, if you have anything to say. I
would just like to make a comment. If we don't have an assistant, we're gonna lock her up for 24/7,
No,
360? I mean, she's entitled to time off. I mean, I think we need to budget some money so that on the rare chance you get any time off, that we could pay somebody to cover. That's all I'm
Do
saying.
you have any kind of a reciprocal with like Rehoboth or anything?
I don't from Rehoboth. I need to talk to the new officer, animal control officer over there, because when the other officer was there, she was not going to come to town, she was not going to touch our town at all. So it sort of fell by the wayside. I've never asked Somerset Swansea because they do the towns. And Taunton is not on the table because of other things. So it would be Rehoboth that would have to come in. 9 times out of 10, if an officer had to pick up a dog and bring it to the hospital, and if I wasn't, available, they could do that. I don't think you're going to get an assistant for what we're paying for an assistant, because we are requiring them, well, what was said, that it would be weekends. So we're requiring somebody to stay on weekends for 4 weekends of the month for, I don't know, it came out to $300-400 for the month. People aren't going to do that. I spent more time doing weekend calls than they did, because they had other things to do, because people do things on weekends. I don't know how to figure it out, unless we train an officer that would be willing to do it. That would be, I don't know.
I have a general question. Again, I don't mean to put you on the spot. Typically when we see a salary on here, there's hours next to it, so there's none here. In your opinion, because I know you might not be calculating all the time, how many hours do you think you do in a week? Again, just opinion. Because I get questions about animals, so I know you're getting them. You must be getting bombarded.
Talking phone calls? I mean, I get
phone calls, messages on Facebook, you're getting tagged in.
1 o'clock at night, I get
posts.
Phone calls. If you have to break it down on a weekly basis, I don't know, I could probably fit 40 hours in a week.
I believe that.
Other times, I may not get calls, or it may be a week that's kind of quiet. I hate to say that, because then everything breaks loose. And then I have a hoarding house, and I spend 10 hours for 4 days with either the ARL or MSPCA. So it depends. Weekends, believe it or not, sometimes are my busiest.
I believe it.
I mean, June and July last year, I had 10 to 12 dog bites in the span of 2 weeks. So it goes on rotating schedules, I'm afraid.
Well, I appreciate all that you do. My next question is for you, Town Administrator Aaronstein. I don't mean to put you on the spot. I assume West Bridgewater had an animal control officer? No? I just feel like...
Did you have coverage from another town?
No, it was a police officer function, as Ms. Ferry is discussing.
Okay.
And it wasn't carried out as well as you do. Sorry, West Bridgewater, it's not. The officer doesn't want the duty, so he doesn't invest the time that you take. And I'm not saying you need to do it all on your own. I don't know what the answer is. I like mutual aid, but again, they have to be willing to do it, so you're making some good arguments here. But West Bridgewater did not, we had a lot of, there's one woman in town who just kind of volunteered and served as this like auxiliary position, not really in any professional capacity. She took cats. Everyone knew that she would take cats, and she sort of volunteered. She was not paid to do so. She was just a resource that the town had.
Did you have a shelter if a dog was picked up?
We had an agreement with a local officer. We did not have our own shelter.
Okay.
We had an agreement with a local shelter that we had to pay
Right.
for
Right.
boarding. And then when the law changed, the budget went up because we
Right.
then had to pay for 10 days
Right,
of care.
right.
So it was outsourced.
And now everybody has to be trained.
Mhm.
Well, if you hired somebody, or anybody hires somebody, within a year of hire date, they have to be trained. That's a new law. And it doesn't matter how many hours you put in, if you get in that animal control vehicle and go capture, you need to be trained.
So,
And I have
a
to do.
police officer would not be trained?
No, they would have to
They
go
would
get
have to-
trained.
I see, okay.
They would have to go get trained, and they would have to put in hours, because I have to have so many hours at the end of the year to keep my certification.
Do any of my colleagues have any questions? Town Administrator Aronson, do you have anything left on 292?
No, I just am asking that we hold that one for,
Yep.
you know, maybe hash out the details of an assistant and formulate a plan. I'm all for things if there's a plan that makes sense. So maybe my conversation, I'm supposed to speak with the chairman tomorrow, so I'll bring that up.
One last concern of mine, and I don't know if my colleagues share this concern. It sounds like, I know how much work you're doing, but the salary department request seems very low, so if it's okay with you, just looking to see like what other towns pay. I literally have no idea, but I can't imagine someone working 40 hours a week for this salary that's indicated under FY19 department request.
But it's not 40 hours every week.
No,
It's not.
agreed.
It goes up
But
and down.
It goes up and down.
I see the messages. I mean,
I know,
I would
I know.
guarantee, even on her,
I'm not saying
Don't
I'm
allow
for or
me to
against, I
speak
just
for
want to
you.
clarify that.
yeah, no, I understand, Selectman Taylor, but I would imagine there's not a week where you're doing less than 30 hours. I mean, I see the Facebook I mean, I can't even imagine.
I mean, I would also say coming up, if Right to Farm
Oh,
happens,
she's,
And the leash law,
and you have
Yeah.
to work with AgCom
well, and the leash law that's gonna be. when
on
they're
the
approved, they-
article, on the warrant.
That will, that's not a job of the law.
I think another
Did we
concern
have that
is
on?
the fact that
Leash law, okay.
she's
leash
the only one, and it's 24/7. It's
That's my
24/7.
concern.
I mean, our jobs are 24/7, but we rarely get a call to come out,
Correct.
whatever. That's not the case with this job.
I agree. So if you don't mind, just
don't-
also looking into the salary of
Salaries.
the animal control officer, that'd be great. Is that okay with you? All right. Any other questions before we move on?
No.
All right. 294, Madam Administrator.
A hotbed of
This
is paid too much.
contention.
Did he win?
It's paid too much. I think we should eliminate this line.
I just went with the department request. I recommend the department request.
Okay.
It's a small sum.
So before
You
we,
have to cut back on groceries. Dave.
before we
Who's
move
the-
on.
Who's the, I know who the first one is. Who's line 5105? Do you hold that title too?
You are a Renaissance man,
He's gonna tell you,
Superintendent
it's
Ferry.
2 doors.
Mhm.
So is that the end of public safety?
So,
No, we have two more in public safety.
oh,
Sorry, one's the harbor master that we've,
Oh, yeah, just there above. I
so
saw it.
again, just to reiterate, the harbor master, again, when we checked the salaries, it should be for the harbor master stipend, $1,040.40, and then for the assistant harbor master stipend, the same figure. So I just want to make that amendment for harbor master. And then disaster committee, this is now the emergency preparedness committee. This now comes under the Board of Health. My recommendation is that this budget be reduced to just a professional and technical training, because everything else would come under a Board of Health function, Board of Health training, and they have a budget for those kinds of things.
So you're
that's
just gonna
my-
keep that 3,000.
mhm.
Any communication below that?
Professional tech, I mean, perhaps communications in case they need to send something
Okay,
out.
okay.
But I did carry over the
Got it.
500 for, what is this now, office supplies.
Mm-hmm.
But I eliminated they requested 200 for office supplies. I bumped it to 500 and eliminated the dues and subscriptions and the travel, because that, again, would be covered under Board of Health functions.
So the total for this department is what?
$4,500.
Oh, okay.
Same amount,
Okay,
but just
You
these
just
three
move things
lines.
around.
okay.
And even, you know, if I'm being honest, I think I'm being generous with the office supplies, because what would,
Yeah,
they
what
need
do they use
medical
for office
supplies, if anything. So, but we'll see, because it's
Well,
new
hopefully
and
they're not working
revamped.
in the office in the midst
Really,
of a
really,
disaster.
the office supplies should come out of Board of Health.
I think so too, but I'm already sick in travel and dues and subscriptions out of the Board of Health, so I thought we'd see how it went.
It just makes it easier to control, gives them
Right.
more flexibility, and, you know, less accounting.
So that's
Before
that's
we-
public safety.
Before we take this as a block, I just want to clarify, we are withholding, for now, 241, 242, 243, 245, 292, and that's it.
You want to withhold 241, building inspector?
No.
I thought that one was all set.
I did too.
Okay,
I have 242,
42, 43, 45, and 92.
that's what I have listed.
Mr. Chair, are we all set?
Yeah?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve all of the budgets listed under public safety with the exception of Department 242, 243, 245, and 292, so we get additional information.
Before we take a vote, do we need to mention the amendments, or are we just going to take it like that's a given from the motion?
Well, I'll add the words, we approve as recommended.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? The ayes have it, motion passes.
Okay, before we get into education, we do need to back up and revisit 122, which is the Board of Selectmen budget that we talked about last meeting.
Yep.
And this is because the telephones were, I guess, paid for out of a special article, and now that's come to an end.
Oh,
And so we have to edit our line, our commingled line.
what line are we
Get the
talking?
I'm gonna get the number for you.
What's the line number?
I'm
What's the
I'm
account?
gonna grab it right now. 5341, under Board of Selectmen,
I got
122,
it,
5341.
Mhm.
Hold on. Right now it's at
Seven.
7,000, yeah. So Karen and I discussed this and talked about our needs for cable and potentially increasing it. We're, with those departments moving over to Old Town Hall, we're trying to see if we need to increase. I still believe we need to increase it. So we're managing those, we're kind of testing that out. But we are suggesting about $15,000 that would cover. So not increase it, but increase it by 8,000 to a total of 15,000.
Mhm.
And that would cover internet connectivity, telephones, and everything else that comes out of commingled. What am I missing? Verizon, our long distance. That's
So-
town-wide long distance.
Understood. When we voted on this, I believe it was last week or the week before, we voted, when we approved 122, I think it was with the 7,000. So were we just amending our prior vote?
Amending it to
Okay.
fund that line at
Mhm.
15,000 to cover these phone charges. And thank you to the town accountant for flagging this for us.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we amend Department 122, line 5341, communications, commingled billing, by $8,000, showing that that line, excuse me, that line is now at $15,000, and that the grand total for general government be increased by that $8,000.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion, and we also have a second. Further discussion on this? Hearing none, let's take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it, the motion passes. And thank you,
for
Town
that.
Accountant Louise, for all your hard work, always.
Okay, the schools. We have not heard from Bristol Aggie, but the figure you see before you is generated from a formula that the town accountant takes care of and does every year. So that figure is $61,417.65. The Bristol Plymouth assessment, $621,714. That public hearing was held on April 3rd. That has passed. That's the assessment they came through, and that's what they're still asking for. The item that has changed from what your documents say is the DR Regional School assessment, which is now coming in at I wish. $10,757,577. I mean,
Run that by me
I don't
again.
know, 10 million, so 10757,577. I mean, I feel kind of powerless because
Yeah,
if you cut it, it's still a no. I mean, I don't know.
It's gotta be looked at closer, because
I agree.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion that we approve under Department 300 Education, Bristol County Agricultural High School and the Bristol Plymouth assessment, and that we hold on DR Regional based on the Finance Committee meeting last night.
We have a motion.
I'm just wondering, we need to look at the Bristol County and, what the Aggie, BP and Aggie.
They're based on enrollment.
Pardon me?
They're based on enrollment. You don't have much choice.
Okay.
And they're vocational schools, so they can go there even if we
Okay.
budgeted zero.
And town accountant Louise is, it just in prior history, has usually been spot on for these two.
And we can always make a reduction or an increase if we have to.
You just would think that, is the enrollment going up everywhere this much? You know, we have the consistent number of students throughout the area?
I can
From
tell you,
Dayton?
Dayton students are going to
No.
vocational technical
are.
schools.
I understand
And
that.
other communities are, they're decreasing, they're going to
But the-
academic
So
schools.
the question is the population that we send to DR gone down?
It would have to.
Okay. That's my concern,
Mhm.
because all of these go up,
Mhm.
and yet we're still dealing with about the same number of kids.
But
Right, yeah, it's the same pool, yes,
I know,
they're
so I'm
just going
saying-
to different
so I think
directions.
then I think the DR needs to really be looked at. Okay.
But as I understand, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Town Administrator Aaronstein, the discrepancy or the increase that we were presented with tonight for the DR Regional School District Assessment is somewhat based on the special education program, is that correct?
Well, the other problem
There's
is,
some in there.
there's no state aid in there. That's a gross budget. We have no idea what the net is. That
That's true.
10.58 or whatever that number is, that's what they gave us at the public hearing. But they did not give us anything, and that was what Mr. Swartz was saying. We have no idea what they're not even guessing at state aid at this point. So that's why I think we put it
So
on
I'll
hold.
second your motion.
We have a motion and a second to approve the Bristol Aggie operating assessment as well as the Bristol Plymouth BP assessment. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's take it to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. The motion passes.
And that includes a hold on DR, correct?
That includes the hold on DR, absolutely. We will
Are we
need
gonna go
to
through more of these?
revisit
or-
It is totally your purview. If you want to stop.
I would
Are
make
we
a-
gonna be holding
You'll
up
be
the
fine.
finance committee? I'm
No,
sorry.
I wanted to make sure we got through education because that's what they're going to do first. They're not meeting again until April 24th.
Oh, so we'll have a
So
whole
we
nother
have
meeting.
time.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I'm just gonna, since Mr. Ferry is sitting here, we just get through the rest of 9 and 10, which is
Okay.
all of his departments,
Oh, okay, absolutely. Sorry, Superintendent.
highway
Sorry.
department.
It always seems to be.
We
a
can do
problem.
this for you. Okay,
Um,
422, Madam Administrator.
Okay, again, I think I kept this, I'm just verifying, but I kept this. The only line I reduced was gasoline, and I reduced it by 4. I told Mr. Ferry that.
And Mr. Ferry was receptive to that.
Gracious.
Okay.
No, he knows he gets another shot in the fall.
I think.
He knows
with-
the game.
I think with the amount of effort that Mr. Ferry puts in, that I would like to recommend we give him a 5% increase rather than 2% increase.
Is that a motion?
That'd be motion.
What line are we looking at?
5105.
515.
Oh, I'll second that.
I wish I could third it, Superintendent Ferry. So we have a motion and a second to increase Superintendent Ferry's salary by 5%. We really need to look at that animal control
Oh,
salary
and
after this.
we'll get that tree wood.
Absolutely. Well, that we're cutting. So we have a motion and a second to increase his salary by 5% over the 2% that was requested. I am also in support. I'm filing that under discussion. Do my colleagues have anything else they'd like to say? Mr. Ferry, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Don't tell us you
All
don't
right.
want it.
His face says it all. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to increase the highway superintendent's salary with a 5% increase for fiscal year 19. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. That motion passes.
Can I just make a comment about gasoline?
Mr. Rhines.
Watching the news this evening, gasoline
Right.
prices are gonna skyrocket between now and Memorial Day. They're talking $3 across the board for the rest of the summer.
Yep.
So it's just something to take into consideration.
We're gonna-
Absolutely.
With the fall town meeting.
Superintendent Ferry?
With his comment and me not agreeing with Mallory taking the money away, that present number was with a $3 gas price, so I think it would be safe.
Perfect. Thank you very much, sir. Okay, continue with the budget. I'm sorry, Madam
No,
Administrator.
please don't apologize. Snow and ice control, I level funded that. Well, I didn't level fund, I recommended what the department request was. Dayton Berkeley Bridge, I just went through historical spending and just didn't go with the 1,800, I went with 1,500. I know it's 300, but it all adds up after a little while. And we only expended $430 midway through the year. I thought that was fine, we'll be fine.
You okay with that, Selectman Goulart?
Actually, I'd rather leave it just where it is, because we have to upfront the money and pay the bills, and Berkeley gives us their
Reimbursement.
share. And I'm,
And also that the whole control for the whole bridge is on our side. Any, you have to have any meetings or whatever, it's still unforeseen. It's so new. You're right to look at that number, but I think it's too new to bring it down.
although it says energy, it's more than just light bulbs, let me put it that way. Because that, as he said, that box is on our side, and it's our responsibility if something happens.
So restore that to 18?
Yeah.
Well, how much do we spend, it doesn't look like we're gonna spend the whole amount this year, though. So we can always go at fall town meeting to increase that if we need to.
I think what Selectman Goulart is saying, please don't let me speak for you, Selectman Goulart, is that we can reduce it as well.
At the fall town meeting?
Correct. So it's,
Nothing gets reduced generally as fall town.
Oh,
well,
no, that's not true.
we have reduced it.
$83,000
Okay.
one year.
On its own, there's nothing to absorb
I know.
any expenses, so
I know.
it'd be fair to hire, not like your person, for example,
Okay.
and not be able to pay them.
We're not talking a lot of money here anyway, so.
True. I'm okay with keeping it at 1,800, and if we need to reduce it, we'll reduce it, and that's okay with me. Are you okay with that, Town Administrator?
Oh, okay,
Ernestine?
yeah.
Okay.
Again, you don't have to take these, this is, all right, stormwater. We have a lot to do with stormwater in this town, so I don't want anyone, in the public to look, oh my gosh, look at this high figure, but, again, I don't think Mr. Ferry liked this, but I, reduced the public works supplies line by by 10,000. But again, in historical spending, even that leaves a little bit of a buffer. And that is line, 5530. Other than that, it's as requested.
But will will the street cleaning and the stormwater issues with this reduction will still be okay, correct?
I
To address
believe
all
that we will be, but I don't want to speak for him.
Well, it's projected, $28,000 year-end balance in these numbers.
I didn't just pluck this from,
I know.
when I looked at it, I did look at ATM, annual town meeting votes from last year and what was expended through March. I know that on your sheet, you only have till December, but,
I know you do your due
I
diligence.
know, I don't want everyone thinking, I'm just
I don't-
going like with scissors.
I understand, I just don't want to kneecap any department
Right.
head, so.
Agreed.
Mr. Ferry, in the spirit of asking
That's
the
fine.
person directly, you'll be able to function with the $30,000 for fiscal year 19?
What line are we looking at?
5530.
And it was reduced from 40 to
5530.
30, that's her recommendation. Yep, so I'm just asking Mr. Ferry if that's okay.
Should be able to, however, this budget is being shared with the newly formed stormwater committee, and also, there's not much history for this budget either. And again, there's no, that's the line that would account for any other line except personnel. Being so new, it's tough to gauge. And we're already experiencing some repairs, unforeseen repairs. So instead of creating a project or a special article, that's where you would get the repair money from.
Madam Administrator,
I was gonna ask where the historical data came from too, because up until, yeah, see, the problem is, prior to this, the year we're in, all of the expenditures for stormwater were here, there, and everywhere in the budget. So we did our best to do our MS4 and pull this out of here, we did this, and, you know, so we don't have more than 1 year of historical data, that's the problem. All our other departments do, so,
are you okay with, Madam Administrator, and my two colleagues with doing a compromise, doing 35,000?
Of course I am. I mean, and I don't wanna
Or we can
handicap
just,
anyone.
we can just approve Mr. Ferry's original request
Or
of
we can approve the
40,000.
30, because we can always go back again at the special, but the history is that you haven't spent close to 30,000.
But what I think
We're doing
Superintendent,
that first spring.
I know you are, I understand.
I already have 9 bases that need repaired.
Okay.
Yeah, once you see it.
I don't think our history in this new department, I'll call it, is as reliable as every other department we have, simply because of what has happened in the past. If we had 3 or 4 years of data, you could average it all up and say, on the average, this is what it is. But we only got this, you know.
It doesn't offend, I mean,
Whatever.
please, it doesn't offend me, my feelings don't hurt. I just,
so I'm accepting motions. I'm okay with 35,000, I'm okay with 40,000, so with that being said, do we have a motion?
I make a motion that we restore that number to 40,000.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Anything from the public? All right.
They don't want to hear any more
Yeah,
about stormwater.
they're done with the budget. Hearing no
Okay,
having
so,
no one speak up,
Mr. Chairman, I will make a motion that we approve all of the accounts under total highways with the few changes that were recommended and what we just reinstated.
I'll second.
discussion? Hearing none, let's take it to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it, motion passes.
Are we gonna go on, or are we gonna stop?
No, we're done. For tonight.
Ferries, thank you for all that you do. And we'll be back in touch about the salary as well.
okay, I thought
Letter-
I was done talking, but I'm not.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Town
No,
Administrator
I'm
Aronson.
sorry. I thought I was,
Mr. Chairman,
Sure, Mr. Woods.
young Boy Scout been sitting here since 7 o'clock. Probably past his bedtime.
So I will accept a motion to move Mr. Reposa, I apologize, sir, to the front, next, agenda item.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we take agenda item 8A out of order.
I'll second that.
Discussion? Hearing, hearing no more discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it, motion passes. Mr. Reposa, I apologize and thank you so much for being here.
That's okay.
I'm excited to hear about your Eagle Scout project.
Okay, so my name is Alex Proza, and I live in 1540 Smith Street, and I would like to build birdhouses for the west entrance of Broad Cove Nature Trail. And I would like to build 8 chickadee houses, 2 bluebird houses, and 5 eastern screech owl houses, for a total of 15 houses.
What's the last one?
Eastern screech owl.
Okay.
That sounds very interesting. And where did you get this idea, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I was thinking about what could be done, and around that Broad Cove area, there's not really like much to do but I went to the Steamposium, and I saw I guess like the stage kind of that you were gonna put.
Viewing platform.
Yeah, the viewing platform, and that would go pretty well with birdhouses.
Nice, very crafty. Okay. And had you already been in touch with Superintendent Ferry?
No, I went to the Conservation Commission,
Okay.
and they liked the idea.
All right.
Is this an Eagle Scout project?
Mhm.
It's an Eagle, okay, just want to make sure.
Selectman Goulart?
Oh, yeah.
So have you made contact with Mr. Ferry?
No.
Mr. Ferry?
Here he is.
Here he is.
This is Mr. Raposa. What happened was, Mr. Raposa didn't know, he went to Concom first, and he didn't know, he wasn't advised by his troop, he should have contacted Mr. Ferry, because he has the checklist. And that was, it's a formality thing, so he got approval from Concom, and that's why he's here tonight, because he needs initial approval from the Board of Selectmen.
Well, I think it sounds fantastic. And I appreciate you continuing the strong Dayton tradition of Eagle Scouts doing public service projects.
So I'll make a motion that we approve this Eagle Scout project for Broad Cove,
For Alex Raposa.
for Alex proposal.
Second?
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. The motion passes. And congratulations, Mr. Raposa. We look forward to seeing how it develops.
Thank you, and could I just have a signature?
Absolutely.
But when I printed this out, I put John P. Taylor as the chairman.
No. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay. Karen, can this be whited out? All right. The new chairman will sign.
Jack wasn't chairman when he showed up.
Okay, here it is.
So do you need him for anything?
There is
And I
a few
don't
more
think-
things he probably should do with me
Okay,
to get him
so,
I'll give you my card and you can give me a call, we'll go from there.
Yeah, he needs to get back.
Thank you.
The observations, the one that we were in, the Steamposium, that one's is installed.
Fix it after we
And that one, ironically, ended up
Yeah,
like
we just take it back with him.
just over the wall.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
it's already been installed?
Two of them up there.
Oh, is that right? We need to let the Taunton paper know because Charlie wants to do a story on this, okay?
Magical powers.
Okay, I'll send him an email, tell him to get in touch with you and, Mr. Frenette.
All right, Mr. Raposa, I crossed out John P. Taylor and I wrote my name. And I hope that this is acceptable. If it's not, we'll be happy to white it out and re-sign.
Okay.
So,
Thank you
as
very
I-
much. It's a pleasure meeting you.
As I told you on Saturday, you have 2 more visits. You'll come to see us midway through the project, give us a project update. And then, when the project is completed and you bring your book in for final signature, and that'll end it, okay?
Okay.
And that'll be to celebrate you. Don't worry about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
And thank you to your parents. Have a good night. And thank you, Mr. Woods. Okay, so we are going to go back to old business. I cannot believe we are still on old business. 7C, sign letter of non-opposition for One Connection, who gave their presentation, it was either last week or the week before.
That stole my thunder. That's exactly what I was gonna say. So this is just to, this letter of non-opposition is something that's necessary for them to continue with their permitting. The Board of Selectmen cannot write it how the state
Right.
wants you to, because we cannot mandate that the town vote in favor of it. We have to wait for town meeting. So the letter has been altered. I know you've all been through this before, but it's the best we can do. That we've checked with the planning board, who is working on a marijuana overlay that would include this location, and that will bring it to town meeting. It's the best we can do. We're not holding up the business from going forward. If it gets kicked back, it gets kicked back. And that's all
I
we can do.
agree with signing it, but I would just say I must have, last year, must have signed half a dozen of these, and they kept getting thrown back, but we can give it another shot.
Selectman Goulart?
Does zoning have to weigh in on this?
No, I've
You
actually
just-
been in constant communication with the planning board to make sure that this goes on for this town meeting. So they did vote on this particular parcel, then they voted again to expand the overlay to a certain district, and they'll hold a hearing on the bylaw, and then it will be in town meeting warrant, on the town meeting warrant.
Do we have a recommendation from,
Planning?
no, what's Vicky's committee?
The Development and Industrial.
Industrial Commission, because they get involved with businesses coming in. Do we have anything from them?
May I?
They're aware of this particular company, yes. But they really have nothing to do with it.
Yeah, but I think we ought to ask what they think.
May I make a point?
Oh, they are aware.
I think what you might be getting at is a concern that I have, and I've actually discussed this very briefly with the chairwoman of the Development and Industrial Commission. Do we have any idea about, so I thought they were very professional, Connection Corp, when they did their presentation. I don't have many concerns. I have more of a black box, and it's, do we have any information on the financing of everything?
I think, if I can comment, I think this letter only gives them the ability to try to go forward, because we still have to negotiate with everything else with them. So I think this just allows them, hopefully allows them to continue with their application.
That's a valid
And it's
point.
gonna have to come back to us anyways.
This is just the first thing that they do. In order for them to fill out packet one for the application, they would require a community host agreement.
Right.
Which is not what they're asking for now.
Correct.
They're just asking for.
To get their
a letter of
application.
intent. Is that what they're asking for?
It's a letter of non-opposition,
Letter of
and
non-opposition.
it's required to continue in
Right,
the
and
state
I
process.
think they need that to go forward, because they're looking for finance, and I asked them myself personally, who's the money behind this company? And they didn't have an answer for me, they said they were looking for funding. Okay, so, I'm not sure how strong One Connection Corp is, because when there was three of them standing in front of me, and none of them was the money people.
That's my concern.
But that's not our issue right now,
Just
though.
because this is going forward, it
But I don't see
doesn't,
a problem giving that letter.
No.
and all it's saying is, yep, we've checked, we're working on an overlay. I mean, that's all it's saying.
Right, in
We're
order
doing
to
our
get
part to zone it.
A community host agreement, they're gonna need
Right.
a lot of stuff.
That's
It's in
totally
2
different.
weeks, I'm meeting
I'll
with
make a
them.
motion that we,
Before Selectman
Did you
Taylor.
get so when you were talking, did you get a recommendation, or did she say anything about this company? Does she know anything about them, or?
I don't want to speak for the chairwoman, but what I
No,
will
I
say
don't wanna
is,
put her on the spot.
of course, but my impression was she would have been okay with not going forward with the letter this evening, just this evening. But again, you know, she's not
I
on the board of
spoke with
selectmen.
Vicki about this company,
Mm-hmm.
and I spoke with her also about there's another company, edible manufacturing company, looking to do something at 620 Spring Street, and they're gonna be on our agenda for next week. So, things are happening, and this letter that they're looking for really enables them to do nothing other than look for funding. Because if you were coming to me to borrow money, I'd wanna know how you're gonna pay me back. Okay?
You think?
So that's what they do.
Before we move on and maybe decide what we're going to do with this tonight, I just want to make a statement to the public, and it is simply this. I know we've thrown a lot of phrases like community host agreement out. If we do sign this letter of non-opposition support this evening and the board votes for it, in favor of it, all this does is allow One Connection Corp to continue. The Board of Selectmen still retains the ability through the community host agreement to either essentially really allow One Connection Corp to come to Dayton and open up shop or not. So there are still checkpoints in place. I just want to have the public be clear that this is more the opening salvo in the process, not the final destination. And thank you, Mr. Woods, for your insight this evening. You're welcome. So I'm accepting motions on the letter of support.
is a letter of support or a letter of non-opposition?
It's called a letter of non-opposition.
If it says
I
letter of
see it,
support.
yep.
I think we should change it to letter of non-opposition. Since, to your point, we don't know who they are.
Right, on April 2nd was the opening day to apply for licenses. And 248 companies applied for a license on that one day.
This is medical, just.
Yeah, this is medical.
So I'll make a motion that we sign a letter of non-opposition for the registered medical marijuana dispensary.
But I'm gonna read, I'll leave it
Okay,
on
go.
Dust to sign, because I'll change
Yeah,
that.
right, yeah, with the correction, yeah.
I'll second it.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it, the motion passes, and the letter of non-opposition for One Connection Corp. has been approved. Next on the agenda, I believe we're going to skip item 7D, the AC unit for Old Town Hall. We're gonna go right to approval of the updated construction sign for the Dayton Police
We're gonna move
Station.
that to next week.
The E,
D.
I'm sorry, yes. Do you want to make a motion on
Mr.
that?
Chairman, I'll make a motion that we defer action on agenda item 7D, AC unit for Old Town Hall until next week.
I'll second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it, the motion passes. 7E, last of the old business, approval of the updated construction sign for the Dayton Police Station. I see it. It looks fantastic. Our names are on it, as are the building committee. Mr. McGee, the chairman, Sergeant Sean Cronin, Joseph Pacheco, Paul Jolly, Charles Rodriguez, Michael Mazetas, and Chief Robert McDonald. I think it looks great. I think we all individually already gave our edits. So
I'll make a motion that we accept the sign as proposed.
Second?
any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it, and the motion passes. Good work. Okay, so we already did 8A, new business. Let's go to 8B, discussion of future use of old police building.
So I think it's time to just make a decision on what we're gonna do with this building, and if we're gonna repurpose it for another function. I know an idea has been thrown out for an animal control officer to use it. I've heard what she plans to do on, if she does locate there, and I think it's a good plan and a good use of space, but where there's some roof issues, we need to know if we're going to repurpose this building to a future department. That way we can make decisions on how we're gonna maintain it and take care of it.
I think we should repurpose it if we can find a suitable use for it, but I think we need a lot more information about, like the thing you just brought up about the repairs necessary. Might be cheaper to buy, to build something someplace
So-
else that's smaller.
This is on here to really get your feedback on whether you would entertain another building going there, or another department going there. And the animal control officer has put some thought into
Mr.
this.
Chairman, I'm gonna make a motion that we defer action on this until next week, because I agree with Mr. Taylor that we need more information, and I'd like to know what the building commissioner's opinion is of its current state. If it's gonna be viable, then we'll find a use for it, but.
Okay. That was a motion, correct? Do we have a
Second.
second? All right.
And
We
Mr. Chairman, I think maybe you should look into that a little further too,
Mhm.
and see what the codes are on,
Oh, yeah.
what do you call your facility? Animal shelter. I didn't want to call it the wrong thing, I didn't want to call it dog pound, but animal shelter. I'm sure that there's a lot of strict codes, how big the kennels need to be, and whatnot, and I'm sure it's gonna be very expensive.
So we need to look at the whole thing.
I think it's a good idea to look at the whole picture. What does the state require for an animal shelter? I mean, we're not just gonna have a half, you-know-what animal shelter. If we're gonna have an animal shelter, let's have a nice animal shelter.
Yeah.
And if it's gonna be so nice, maybe other communities would be willing to pay us to take care of their animals. Maybe we can make some money.
And the
That would
fact
translate to Animal Control Officer Ferry taking care of other towns' animals.
And the fact that that building has a very old section,
Yeah.
and then the construction trailers were brought in and attached to it to give them some space. So even the construction of the whole building, as I say, you get some very old building there, so it all has to be looked at.
I mean, she can't even transport an animal unless it has heat and air conditioning.
Right,
I
right,
mean, people don't even have that for their kids, some of them.
true.
Okay. So, we have to follow the rules, but let's find out how much it's gonna cost us.
And we have to find out what the rules are. Animal Control Officer Ferry.
Yeah, I know some rules, but if it is a go, there are grants out there and stuff like that that we can tap into to be able to use, to make the facility what it should be. It may not, I'm not gonna say it's not gonna cost the town anything, but it could be very minimal to the town. But I can't start applying for grants and stuff unless I can say,
This is
this is what's gonna happen. So I wouldn't even be able to tell you how much you could get, but I know towns that have gotten big grants to put in, not a new shelter, repurpose the building, because new shelters are millions of dollars.
And maybe you could start putting some of that together, so we make sure that
Yeah,
that this building will meet your needs according, you know, with code and everything else.
Right.
And also, and then we would know how much you're asking for, and,
Right, I mean, until we know exactly.
And Jim will
Right.
need to know what the special rules are that you have to,
Right,
would
we
have
need
to
a
follow.
Just, let's just say this, besides the highway department wanting their building back, which they deserve to have back, I've had it for 9 years, it was supposed to be a temporary thing. At some point, the state's gonna come in and shut me down. I don't have a quarantine room. My animals, if I have an animal there that's in that 7-day quarantine, by law, I shouldn't take anything else in, which sort of restricts what I can do. I can't take cats there, so that restricts what I can do for the town. So there are a lot of things, so if we shut that down, then we have to contract somewhere else.
yeah.
Correct.
So we need to collectively figure out
What we're
what
gonna
we're
do.
going to do.
I don't think there'd be any objection to,
No, I'm
to
just.
you going in there. I just want to make sure we know what we're
Right,
getting into. If we-
Right,
if we-
but there are things that
Yep.
if the state came in and
Agreed.
went into my shelter at this point,
I understand.
they would say, yeah, it's a nice holding area, but it's not a shelter.
And my understanding was where it is right now was never meant to be a permanent space, so I'm with you, ACO Ferry. I believe Mr. Rhines had something to say.
I'd just like to ask the board that if, it would be a possibility maybe other departments could also move into that same location, because, you know, part of the building is, as Selectman Gore stated, that, it's old, it could be torn down, you'd be able to just take out what you need to remove, use the portable trailers, there's plenty of office space in there, Mrs. Spirit had plenty of space. You know, I know that other departments in town, especially recreation, will look, we need a home. Our home was in this building for 15 years, now it's gone. I'm doing it out of 316 Main Street in Dayton. You can call me, I'm at home, but, that's just a plus.
The other thing
That's why
too
we
is those construction
prefer-
trailers are higher off the ground than the original building, so if, I mean, it's sitting in a floodplain. So if those could be serviced, there's certainly, that's a plus, the fact that they're up off the ground.
That will be something that's looked at, of course, absolutely. But again, we need to, what Selectman Taylor is saying, we need to know more about the
Right.
potential repairs, upfront costs, if we need to fix anything, and then to what Mr. Wood said, code, state regulations, et cetera.
So
Okay.
I believe it needs a new roof. I know that right off the bat, so that could be.
The trailers too?
Where the seams are.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well, we'll know more.
Mhm.
All
All
right.
right.
Sursage. Highway Department needs catch basins. Because we joined Sursage, we can,
Oh,
sorry.
We need to vote on putting 8B to next week.
Yes, to defer it
Motion to
to
second.
next
Well,
week.
well, maybe
So we
not
can get
next-
further
just-
info.
Just
Yeah,
get
in
some
the
more
future.
information.
Yeah, that's
and I'll
fine.
bring-
Defer it to a future meeting.
Yep. Thank you, Selectman Goulart. Okay, award Sursage contract EJ Company Incorporated.
So you can take a vote on that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Getting excited. Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it. Motion passes. Thank you, Selectman Goulart. Award Sursage contract, catch basins.
Highway Department needs catch basins. They were in disrepair because of, just because they are. And the Sursage group were allowed to, we've asked our administrator there to reach out to the lowest bidder on the previous year's contract. He's agreed to sell to us at a price of $120 per catch basin. And I've checked with Highway Superintendent Ferry, and this is the catch basin he wants. And we now just need to have a vote of the Board of Selectmen to award this vendor with the ability, you know, we have to just enable him to sell to us. I know that sounds silly, but.
I'll make a motion that, I'm sorry, you done? I'll make a motion that we approve the purchase of 12 catch basins, described as catch basin square grates, for $1,440.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Any further discussion?
Yes,
Superintendent
he's
Fenn.
asked a question,
Okay.
anyway.
Mhm.
And Jack, trying to clarify, that is just a square grate, cast iron grate at the top. Sometimes they get clogged in, we have some missing. So we need to replace them ASAP.
All right. Thank you, Superintendent Ferry. We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. Motion passes. Thank you, Superintendent
Mary's
Ferry.
are on a roll tonight.
If I could just ask you to sign that, and then we'll take care of sending it, the accountant gets a copy.
You want us to sign it right now?
Yes, please.
Do you have, like, the copy you're gonna use? The original?
I got one right here.
I already wrote on mine, I
Oh,
apologize.
sorry.
That's the.
Here, I have it. There
I
you
got
go.
it right here.
Shoot. We'll use this one. Thank you, Selectman Goulart. All right. Thank you. I don't mind passing that to Town Administrator Ernstine. And now we're ready for accepting donation of sand salt mix, and I suspect this has something to do with you, Superintendent Ferry. Town Administrator Aaronstein?
Pretty straightforward, yeah.
We have received 2 donations, and I can let Superintendent Ferry talk about this, because he's the one who brought them to my attention, but he emailed that we received a donation of sand salt mix from T-Scape Landscaping, about 20 tons. Thank you very much. And another donation of sand salt mix from G-Lopes in excess of 100 tons. The town just needs to accept the donation.
These people are catching on, there are some DEP and EPA requirements that this, after a certain date in the calendar year, this product has to be undercover, so these people don't have that, so they do a spring cleanup, and you get to enjoy that. We'll store it for them indefinitely. And Mr. Lopes made another delivery also, is another trail, another truckload came in also.
So it's more than
More than 100 tons?
Have both donors delivered? Have both donors delivered?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the donation of sand salt mix from T-Scape and from G-Lopes Companies.
Second?
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. The motion passes. Thank you very much to T-Scape, Mr. Fullen, and thank you also to G-Lopes for all that you guys do for the town of Dayton.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a, do you have an idea what the value of that is?
It's a different recipe, no.
The reason I ask is because I'm going to make a motion that the town send a letter of thanks and appreciation to both of those donors, and with an approximate number, because they're businesses, they might be able to use those for tax purposes. I know they didn't ask for it, but I think we should do it.
I'll second that.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it, the motion passes, and we will prepare the letter. Thank you so much, Superintendent Ferry. Next, Planning Board approval of the educational incentive expenditure. I'm almost nervous to ask, is Mr. Woods presenting this evening, or is Town Administrator Aaronstein?
I can do it. The planning board voted to approve the incentive. It's here because she's a collective bargaining employee, and it has been budgeted for.
And so this is for the office manager?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm sorry. Anything to add?
Make a motion to approve the planning board request for the educational incentive expenditure for their office manager. That's the title.
A second?
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? I just wanted to say I was just joking, and I appreciate all your input here this evening. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it, and the motion passes. Last of the new business, cleaning services for Old Town Hall.
Now that Old Town Hall is occupied by those various departments, we have to have it cleaned, and this is our current cleaning service, offering $215 per month. And I'll just say that as we've gone out to bid, which will be before you next week for your cleaning services for the various buildings, the Old Town Hall was included in that. So this, what you have now, is just until the end of the fiscal year.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we accept this MS cleaning service for Old Town Hall in the amount of $215 a month till the end of the fiscal year.
Second, and note lower level only.
Correct.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it, and the motion passes. Correspondence. Do we have any correspondence, Mrs. Brady? All right. Announcements. Selectman Taylor, you want to start?
Yeah, the Board of Health will be holding a public forum at DR High School cafeteria Thursday, April 12th, that's tomorrow, at 6 p.m. to discuss the results of air quality tests performed at the schools. Secondly, Town of Dayton Third Annual Cleanup Day will be Saturday, April 21st, from 9 to 12. Contact Vicki Piazza at 508-824-0488, and that's this coming weekend. No, it's 2 weeks. Week from this weekend. Rabies Vaccination Day is Saturday, April 21st, 2 to 3 p.m. at North Dayton Fire Station. $12 per pet, cash only for the vaccination, and then microchipping and dog licensing is also available, but that will be by check only. So bring cash and check. Dayton Lions Club food distribution will be April 21st at 8 a.m. And the Dayton Historical Society has a few upcoming events. April 22nd, Milliken's Mill Village, A Radical History of the Mount Hope Finishing Company, 2 to 4 p.m. at Friendship Hall, 2036 Elm Street, Dayton, presented by Kelsey Murphy. And April 28th, the Spring Psychic Fair from 10 to 5 at Taunton Yacht Club, 2125 Water Street, Dayton. To reserve space, contact Patty at 508-436-3105.
Thank you, Selectman Taylor. Do we have any selectmen's reports this evening?
I've got one. I'm just going to talk about the STEAM Expo. I've got one on MMA, but I'm going to defer that to next week because it was a legislative update and it's getting late. So, okay. So last Saturday, from 10 to 2 at Dayton Rehoboth Regional High School, the towns of Dayton and Rehoboth had set up a booth to start their public education campaign on stormwater. This is a requirement of the EPA. So with very little notice, we got together, and the item that was on display that Mr. Ferry referenced and that our Eagle Scout talked about was the viewing platform that Mr. Frenette has constructed. It's gorgeous. It's absolutely beautiful. It has now been placed in Broad Cove, which opens Broad Cove up for recreation and educational purposes, so the public can now get down to that location. It has 3 steps. It has a bench. It has a little shelf. It can be used for bird watching or educational field trips. But anyhow, it was on display in the gymnasium, and it attracted a lot of people, and I had a little write-up about it. So what Mr. Dave Perry, who is a selectman from Rehoboth and is also their stormwater chairperson, each town had bags made up. This is the Dayton bag. We also had, and the slogan on here is "Be the solution to stormwater pollution," and that was suggested by Building Commissioner Aguirre. The other thing that we did was we bought these grippers. These are lid openers for jars, And this says, "Get a grip on stormwater," and it was Tom Pyers that came up with that one. So anyhow, the event was very successful. We had a constant stream of people, all ages, from small children to grandparents. We will be planning something for the Memorial Day Parade, and what that will be is, Mr. Perry gave us a banner that he had made up, and he said he's got another one. So if whatever vehicle is in the parade, or whatever, we'll have these banners. We are also looking into having an info table at Cow Chip, and maybe at the Arts Festival in the fall, with some more bags. But when we were talking about the stormwater budget, it's the tip of the iceberg. It's never gonna go away. There's always requirements. But right now, our stormwater committee is focusing on expanding our educational outreach. We're in good shape with the schools. Mrs. Rose has been working on revision of the science curriculum to meet the new state standards, and that curriculum does contain, at all grade levels, chapters on stormwater. So, great event, short time to get ready, but everyone really had a good time, so we're looking forward to doing more outreach. I did take the bag to the MMA meeting today, and they took a photograph of it because the coalition out in the middle of the state that got the chunk of the grant money is looking for ideas, so I think they're gonna be copying some of the things we did. So
Better get a copyright on that.
So, just to wrap up stormwater, we've got a meeting tentatively scheduled for next Thursday. We'll be doing our regular kinds of things. We will be looking at that stormwater document that you're asking us to prepare. And I am going to send information to MMA, hopefully get an article in the Beacon about this event that we were in, which should help other communities in the state to do something about education. And then I spoke to Mr. Ferry today because I want to draft the actual educational outreach program, because we should have that on file just to show that we're doing this. And Mr. Ferry took pictures, so we also have documentation for our files that what happened, and there were 5 or 6 pictures that show, you know, different people. And so thank you very much to Dr. Joe at Dayton Rehoboth, to Dave Perry in Rehoboth, to the 2 high school students that helped us out, and Dave Nappy, who helped Mr. Ferry move the unit, and also to Mr. Aguirre, who helped set it up. It was a good program.
All right. Thank you very much, and thank you for all that you do regarding stormwater. It's greatly appreciated. Next is acknowledgements. Do we have any acknowledgements? That hurts. Okay. Any minutes to approve this evening? All right. Mr. Rhines.
2 questions.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman. One is, has the finance committee set dates for boards and committees to meet with them? And secondly, I know that the warrant article deadline is the 23rd. Is that the
25th.
The 25th? Is that drop that date, and we will have placeholders if you can't make the 25th?
What we've done in the past is, if you give a note to Karen, but it's not gonna hold it forever. It's just a reminder that check with Parks and Rec or whatever department, CPC, whoever, to see if it's gonna be coming. So, again, it's a placeholder, but it's not gonna be open a long time. Let's put it that way.
And the finance committee said that they are starting to meet April, let's see if I get my dates right, 24th and 26th. And they would be reaching out to the departments and committees to schedule meetings with them. But I have received an email from you with a handful of placeholders. I've put them on my list. And, you know, I share that with Karen and the town accountant. So send them along, and it'll be a note.
All right, Parks and Rec are ready to submit to, and we're
Great.
just waiting on CPC, so I just get the board to approve and follow, so.
Thank you.
And the other thing too is, if there are any departments out there that have the same question or similar, if you put in a placeholder for the upcoming annual, if it doesn't make the warrant or you decide not to do it, just let Karen or Mrs. Aaronstein know, not gonna do it this time, leave it in the folder, because it's a reminder for the next time we have a meeting.
Thank you, Selectman Goulart. Approval of the warrants.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the following warrants be approved. 41A-18 in the amount of $90,971.72 payroll. Warrant 41B-18 in the amount of $91,375.21, and warrant number 41C-18 in the amount of $2,076.03, the last two being accounts payable, be approved.
I'll second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. Motion passes. Warrants are approved. Executive session. At this time, I will entertain a motion to enter into executive session under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Numbers 3 and 6.
So moved.
Second?
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. Roll call.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Cable. Appreciate all that you do.